I'd
like to call to order the February 1st meeting of the Clive City Council. Will the clerk please call roll?
Mayor Edwards.
Here.
Council members Klein.
Here.
McCoy.
Here.
Judkin is absent. Weaver. Here. McElhenney.
Here.
She's online, isn't she?
Very good.
Council, Mayor Edwards, Councilwoman Judkins did just join. One moment. Councilwoman Judkins, this is Pete. Are you able to hear us?
Starship Enterprise to Judkins.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Very good. Would you all rise and join us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I know of no changes to the agenda.
Approval.
Second.
Motion second to approve the agenda. Further discussion, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The agenda is approved. Next up, we have our citizens presentation. This is the opportunity for anyone to address the council on an item not on the agenda. If we have anyone here in the council chambers wishing to address us, please come forward to the microphone and identify yourself. Pete, do we have anyone online?
For those online, if you'd like to get our attention, you can use the raise hand function on your Zoom screen. And if you go and hover over reactions, or you can then choose to raise your hand.
And while Pete does that, I'll just remind everyone that we follow the principles of character counts in all the work that we do for the council.
I don't see hands going up, Your Honor.
Very good. We'll move to consent items.
Approval.
Second.
Motion a second on the resolution to approve the consent items. Further discussion. Seeing none, would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote?
Your Honor, I'm having trouble getting my voting to come on, so I'll vote aye.
Thank you very much. So the consent items passed by a vote of 5-0. Next up are our action items, starting with a public hearing on the Indian Hills Trail project. Did we publish the appropriate public notice?
Yes, Your Honor. And in fact, for all three of them tonight, they were published in the Des Moines Register on January 15th, 2024.
Thank you. Richard.
Thank you. Tonight we have a recommendation for award of the trail construction at Indian Hills Woods. We received 5 bids, with the lowest being approximately 10% over and the highest being about 57% over. After we went through all the bid tabs that we received, we found out that the main difference between the engineer's estimate and the lowest bid was the cost of the bridge. Otherwise, every other item was right at the engineer's estimate or below. And looking at the other 4 bidders that we got beyond that, we also noticed that their bridge cost was quite a bit higher. So based on all that work and talking to the design engineer at McClure, we felt that the 10% over was an appropriate price for the project. And it would be our recommendation to approve the contract with Absolute Concrete for the Indian Hills Woods Trail.
Richard, what's that bridge going to look like then? Is it going to be in the standards with other bridges, or is it going to be similar to the one that's currently there, the wooden one? Or
so it'll be similar to the other bridges that cross Walnut Creek along the trail system, the prefabricated steel, and then a wood deck on that.
any plans to recycle or utilize the current bridge that we're getting ready with? What's the plan there?
Yes, so we are going to recycle that and find another location in the park system. We're actually evaluating 2 or 3 locations where we think it might go well, but it's my understanding that was constructed in the last 10 years. So, I mean, it's in very, very good shape. It'll just be working with the Parks and Public Works teams to get it onto a trailer and get it hauled off to the shop until we identify a permanent location for it.
Good.
Richard, just to clarify, this is not the western portion of the Indian Hills Woods Trail, right?
Yes, it's from Lincoln all the way over to 100th Street.
100th, but not west of 100th.
No, correct. Yep, it'll just end at the sidewalk there on the east side of 100th Street.
And where are we at with that piece of it? Remind me on the western portion.
Between 98th and 100th?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's part of this project, and that'll be constructed with this as well. And so based on the council's last guidance several months ago, we've been working out the little cross 98th Street. They'll stay on the north side of the creek and then kind of wind along the north side of the creek over to 100th Street, basically on the footpath that has existed there for a long time.
Any feedback from the neighbors on that, Richard? I know they've been, the community, the local neighbors along there have been very involved in the process. What's their thoughts and feedback?
So we've had specific conversations with the property owner on the southwest corner there, just directly adjacent to it. They'll be the ones most impacted by that. Certainly, they weren't necessarily pleased that that was the best option for that. I think they understood that. We're going to continue to work with them on the type of landscaping, that buffer that they'd like to see between the trail and their property. So that'll be an ongoing effort, and it's a continual dialogue with them just to make sure that we're doing this the right way.
Do you anticipate a completion of the project?
So it will be a couple different things. So we have to have any tree removal that needs to be done by March 31st, typical with a lot of the tree removals. There's only a few tree removals need to be done. Then the main construction will start April 15th, and they have 50 working days. So we anticipate probably late July, early August is when it'll be done, given there's some time for rain and things like that.
Will there be much impact on those neighbors that are right along that trail? Because we've heard from some of them in the past about how, you know, they were impacted by some of the work that was done previously. Will there be much impact to them on this portion
So
of the project?
the biggest impact will be in the neighborhood of the bridge, just because they're going to have to bring in a portable crane to get in there to lift the bridge off the semi and set it in place. So we expect that, but that's a one-day type of thing. The rest of it is going to be pretty low key, not bringing in nearly as many materials, like, you know, the big rock, the public works we had to bring in, the big excavators, things like that. So we expect some disturbance, but not to the point of what it was for the stream bank work.
You have to rebuild the concrete footings on that bridge, or how much infrastructure to support that bridge we have to do?
So it's a 30-foot long bridge, so it's a little bit longer than the existing bridge out there. We will have to rebuild and put new footings down, just because those existing footings weren't able to support the new bridge. And also the angle of how the bridge is crossing that creek is changing. So it'll be completely perpendicular, while the current one is at a little bit of an angle. Part of that is so that we can match up the stream bank work north and south of that. And so it fits in with the hydrology, the way that we want it to work.
Other questions?
Move to close public hearing?
Second.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing. Further discussion. Seeing none, would the council please vote on closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Matthew, did I get that second? If so, I'm done for the night. But if not, all right.
Exactly.
Will the clerk please post that vote? And the public hearing is closed by a vote of 5-0.
Move the resolution approving plans and specs.
Second. Oh, I did not want to tread on your resolution.
Second on the resolution. Further discussion. Seeing none, will the council please vote?
Aye.
And will the clerk please post that vote? Resolution passes by a vote of 5-0.
Move receipt of bids.
Second.
I didn't know we were all talking.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Further discussion. Seeing none, would the council please vote?
Aye.
That passes by a vote of 5.
Move the resolution, the contract to Absolute Concrete Construction for $384,540.55.
Second.
Further discussion. Seeing none, would the council please vote?
Aye.
And will clerk please post that vote? And that also passes by a vote of 5-0. Thank you, Richard. Next up, we have a public hearing on PCC pavement, and we have published the appropriate public notice, as you indicated, Matthew. So Jim, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. We received bids last week for the first of 2 patching projects we'll be undertaking this year. This is for arterial work on University and Northwest 128th Street. We received 2 bids, and while the low bid was about 6% over the engineer's estimate, we are recommending award to the concrete company for the base bid and alternate price listed. We've worked with the concrete company on several projects in the recent past, so we're looking forward to getting started with them. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Jim? Ted?
Jim, will you be coming back to us with kind of the plan for how university is going to be closed down, or is that tonight? And same with 128th Street and dealing with all the traffic and everything that's going on with that.
So on University, because of the amount of traffic there west of the interstate, we did call for nighttime patching. And that's similar to what we've done. It's been a while, but we were out there in the past doing that. One lane will be maintained at all times. And although they are able to work during daytime hours on 128th, again, one lane of traffic will be maintained at all times.
Jim, what's our plan to communicate this construction to the public on that?
On University, more business related. I mean, we've sent out postcards and letters before. It'd be similar to the adjacent residents on 128th. That's typically how we've handled that in the past.
How long of a project is that expected for 128th?
The total project is a late start date of June 3rd, and it extends into September, just based on, yardage per week that they can get. Have to get with the contractor and see where they're proposing to start. And again, it's just doing the math, about 400 square yards a week, and that's about the time they need.
Yeah, 128th Street, one lane all summer is not going to be fun.
Well, and I'd also would add for the council, we'll have some of that anyway with the bridge. So as the council awarded that this last fall, the weather turned on us. They weren't able to get in to do the barrier rail, but that will also be happening around the same time period. Potentially, it might be done before. And it depends on when the contract.
Probably would be. That's obviously the northbound lanes. The 128th, the older piece of the pavement that we're working on is southbound, the southbound lanes.
Oh, so maybe just southbound. So then it would
So I
impact.
think comms will be important because this is right after the 128th interchange was kind of, let's call it under construction for a while. So, I don't think I'm telling you anything you don't already know, but
Sure.
Is the last time we did a nighttime patch, the one on University down east?
Well, we tried to do
Is that
some
the
a few
last-
years ago, and they weren't able to because that was right after COVID and they were having trouble getting drivers overnight. Yeah, it's been a while since we did it both on the true nighttime patching was on University, and that's probably been 10 years ago now.
There's
wow,
not
that
going to be
long?
any really residents affected by that with the nighttime work, right? It's all going to be businesses along there from 128th to the interstate. So we don't have to worry about waking up residents in the middle of the night with construction work, I would hope.
Correct. That was the intention when we laid it out.
I didn't know it was 10 years ago, but that one went well. But I
Yeah,
remember.
We
it was
patched it before we
messaging-
overlaid it.
Messaging and all that.
It was a lot of work and mindful too, part of the reason why we're moving forward, we're presenting this to you tonight is we know that once the Hickman interchange work really gets going, 128th and University are going to be detours. So what we're trying to do is get as much patching and get those roads in as good a shape as we can get them, in terms of patching before we start to see a lot of detour traffic and we can have all the lanes open. Now, can't necessarily control what West Des Moines does on their side of University and when those closures pop up, but we're hoping to coordinate that. Some of that this last summer was telecom oriented that
I was
they,
just going to ask that. So is it just westbound University and not eastbound?
it would be just west.
Yeah,
wouldn't it?
that's-
That's our
I
side
know
of the
West
street.
Des Moines,
That's West Des
fine. I
Moines.
just didn't know if we were coordinating with them to do both. So it's just westbound.
Just westbound.
We can loop people around 123rd on that little loop.
Yeah.
We
Great,
need to do
yeah.
A shortcut.
Further questions for Jim?
Move to close public hearing.
Second.
Motion second to close public hearing. Further discussion? Anyone in the chamber to address the council on the matter? Seeing none, would the council please vote?
Aye.
And will the clerk please post that vote? And that passes by a vote of 5-0.
Move the resolution approving plans and specs.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Seeing none, would the council please vote?
Aye.
And will the clerk please post that vote? And that passes by a vote of 5-0.
Move receipt of bids.
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, would the council please vote? And the
Aye.
clerk please post that vote? That passes by a vote of 5-0.
The resolution awarding the contract to concrete contractor company for $985,337.50.
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, would the council please vote? And will the
Aye.
clerk please post that vote? And that passes by a vote of 5-0. Thank you, Jim. Next up, we have 114th Street construction. And we did publish the appropriate public notice as indicated earlier. So Jonathan.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. And good evening, members of council and mayor. Today I'm here to discuss the bids that were received for the Northwest 114th Street reconstruction. On January 1st, or January 25th, 2024, the city received 7 bids for the work. And after further review, the parent low bid was Alliance Construction Group. Staff believes that they're capable of completing the work, and just high level overview of the project itself is removing the pavement just north of City Hall all the way to Northwest 111th, and additional left turn lane and some minor water main and storm sewer adjustments. And with that all being said, I would be glad to take any further questions.
Questions for Jonathan? Yes.
Jonathan, that Alliance construction bid was $500,000 below the engineer's estimate. Why such a large discrepancy?
We think that a lot of that has to do with the current construction environment. Although that bid's low, if you look at the other, besides just one of the other bids, they're all very closely tight together. That variance is only about 12% between the first or the lowest bid and the 6th lowest bid. So I believe those rates do reflect what the current values of that type of work is. It's a bit of a surprise. Hopefully I'll be giving good news next week too about our.
We like these kind of surprises.
Yeah, this is a great
Don't get me
surprise.
wrong, we like these kind of surprises. So,
As long as they don't come with later surprises.
yeah,
Yep.
as long as we don't have change order after change order following up on.
Other questions for Jonathan?
Well, so
Yeah, Ted.
along the same lines with Jim, so what's our kind of plan for dealing with traffic and what have you along 114th Street during this period?
So we are handling the project as a 3-phase project to allow commercial access to all the properties. That being said, it would be a full closure until the project's fully complete. We do have a proposed detour route in the plans. Currently, that proposed route is utilizing Hickman Road, University, and Northwest 100th instead of going to the interstate or further west.
So explain that to me. So we're doing north of City Hall, right? And so we're going to close a section down and you can only hit businesses like from the south or from the north, or how's that?
Yeah, it will kind of just depend on where that progression of the phase along that curve is. Most of the time, in most cases, you would have to come from Hickman onto those properties, but there will be cases like Den Eliminators. I think there's another collision facility. You'll have to come from the south.
You have your phasing map, Jonathan?
I don't have it on me.
Oh, okay, we'll follow up with the phasing map.
Okay,
to show
so
you
get in there.
Where
I'm
the
assuming we're gonna be
separations are.
doing the necessary communications to all the businesses.
Yes.
that-
Yep. We're already working with the properties directly impacted, but we'll be giving out notices to the other respective commercial properties in the area.
Especially the dealerships there, you know, those are key right there that they could
is the
communicate to.
retail.
Absolutely.
Yes.
There will be full cutoffs though, so like, for example, folks coming to City Hall, the only way to will be from the university side for the entire project, because both sides of the street will be closed.
We saw a little bit of that phasing map
Yeah, I think it was a while
a
ago.
while ago,
We'll
but
follow up with that.
it was done well.
Thank you.
Other
And
questions?
because I brought it up and I think I remember seeing the map because I brought up Clark Street and we do need to be careful there that I don't know how you'd stop it. I mean, you can't say don't go, I mean, you can.
More bump outs.
Yeah,
So people use Clark Street as
Yeah,
a
those
cut
are so
through.
popular.
as a cut through, right?
Yeah.
So,
Did put the scale bar right on top of the street so that no one can see it on the plan at least.
Any other questions?
Move to close public hearing?
Second.
Further discussion?
yeah, just a quick question on some of these. I had written a note earlier that, and this is just some things I've had happen day job wise. How do we know who the subs are on these? Do we ahead of time? Because we've had some of these large contracts and then the subs are just a miserable experience, right? Got some names I'd love to share, but
Sometimes
on
general
compressions or
contractors will line up with,
concrete.
yeah, they'll line up consistently, sometimes with certain subs and sometimes in the actual bidding process when they ask inquiries before the project's actually let, you'll kind of line up who that is. But early on, after awarding, we start that coordination, we become aware of who their subs are. To some extent, we don't have too much control over their subs, although there's always the threat of liquidated damages if
Yeah,
But those
okay.
are always tough to.
yeah, and the general always argues, I gotta use this person for this reason. I'm hopefully anticipating that with the type of bay environment we have, that even those smaller entities will be a little more eager to hit the ground running.
So nothing we can really do about subs.
Will
Other
say-
questions?
Oh, sorry, Your
No,
Honor.
go
I
ahead.
will say that, what you're seeing on the bidding environment here for these big projects, again, we still have to work out the details, but there was a bid letting earlier today for next week's council meeting that was even more savings than this one. So the bidding environment is very active in a positive way for us right now, and that may afford us the ability to do more work this year, later this year. In fact,
What do you attribute that to? Just a weak time in the market, or?
I
Why do you
think,
think
I don't want to speak for the engineers, I'll let them speak to it, but I think what Jeff shared, I think it was the previous council meeting, is they had such good weather at the end of 23, that they got all their work done. They got all the projects done, and so now they're hungry to really fill up their dance cards, so.
Nice change from a couple of years ago.
Right, now is this gonna stay at this level? I hope so, but we'll take the benefits of it. We had a lot of bids queued up here in the months of January and February, and so if that carries through for, one of the bidders that's on here in the middle is the low bidder for the project we bid today. And so they want to fill it, and be aggressive with it. And it's a contractor we've worked with before. So hopefully we continue to see this. And then hopefully we can bring back to the council more work, because we've freed up some resources to do more asphalt overlays, more patching potentially later in the year. And then maybe fill up more work for them in the fall, potentially. So we're hopeful.
Very good. Other questions? Anyone in the chamber address the council on this matter? Seeing none, would the council please vote?
Aye.
And will clerk please post that? Right. And the motion to close the public hearing passes by a vote of 5-0.
Move the resolution approving plans and specs.
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, would the council please vote?
Aye.
And will the clerk please post that vote? That passes by a vote of 5-0.
Move receipt of bids.
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, would the council please vote? And will the clerk please
Aye.
post that vote? And the bids are received by a vote of, drum roll, 5-0.
Move the resolution warn the contract to Alliance Construction Group for $1,349,523.50.
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, would the council please vote? And will the clerk post that vote? And that's passed by a vote of 5-0. Thanks, Jonathan. Next up, we have Greenbelt Landing,
It's online.
and Amanda is online and Richard is helping.
Yes, Richard and I are sharing this one. Sorry to be joining you from Zoom tonight, but I wasn't quite feeling well enough to be in. So we're going to, similar to when we talked about Circasina Park last year, we're going to give you the site plan approval, and then also Richard's going to provide an update on the status of the project. So I know this project has been well publicized, council's been involved, you've seen it multiple times. So I'm going to go through the site plan items relatively quickly, and then mostly rely on if you all have any comments you'd like to ask. So can you go to the next slide there, Richard? The first aspect of the project is the special events building is getting some renovation to it. There is a, can you skip ahead, Richard, to the next one? This is the renderings of the building. I know we've also seen those in our video marketing in more of a 3D mode, but the improvements are largely off of the north side of the building, adding a vestibule area and then the like rooftop screened seating area and patio. Next slide. And there we go. So the second big aspect of the project are the wetlands and walkways, stormwater detention, stream bank stabilization. And I've generally circled the primary areas of those on the site. It is a very significant portion of the project. You can see the stream bank stabilization areas have been generally identified with a hatching. So you can kind of get an idea of the extent of that. One of the items that is outstanding for this will of course be the construction drawings, review and approval. Those typically come in after the site plans are approved. So we will have more details on exactly what is happening for stream bank stabilization once those plan sets are received. But then you can also see the creation of the wetland area toward the left of the screen and the boardwalk going all throughout that area. Next slide. And one more there. The third big component of the project is the festival lawn and stage. That's kind of the central portion that's right off of where the existing parking ends. So next, and you can see the stage here. We have the 3D rendering, but then from the plans, it is at grade is what is shown in the plan documents that are being approved tonight. The other one was from some of the promotional materials, but it'll be the nice lawn space and the stage for events like Clive Fest and other community use.
And is that stage elevated then? We're seeing a couple of different things.
Yeah, in the plan set, it is not shown as being elevated.
So part of it, I can maybe answer that a little bit more. So part of it is doing a little bit of the grading. So that is a little bit elevated, but it's not fully elevated like that. Part of that relates to being within the floodplain and the floodway, that we have to keep that as low as possible so we don't create any additional obstructions.
We thought about any consequences with that?
I know Smith Group is working really hard to try to make sure that it does have a little bit of elevation over the rest of the lawn so that it's not sitting flat.
Richard, there would be an opportunity still to have temporary risers for certain types of shows if that was needed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or the lawn grade being kind of the grading to go up.
Yeah.
It looks like that on the right side. I know that's a rendering from the promotional piece, but
yeah, it's part of
Something
it's just the
like that.
grading of how it's going to end up ultimately, so that I think we should be okay from the perspective of people viewing concerts and things like that.
And that's my concern
Yeah.
too. I want to get away from having to rent
Yes,
risers or stages on this. I mean, that's one of the ideas behind the whole concept. So we're getting away from having to that annual
Absolutely.
rental for whatever. So
yeah, and that's the intent, is that we won't need to rent them for that, but the stage will allow that if we need to for some reason, or if we need to extend it out front, we need for a bigger concert.
For that area, and whether this is Amanda or you, Richard, have we sized that out relative to, like, for example, the Clive Festival, and how many folks that we typically get at Clive Festival, and whether we need an overflow area, or, you know, is that big enough to handle the typical crowd that we get at Clive Fest?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple things that we did to make sure that the size of the stage itself, as well as the size of the festival ground, kind of meet for what we're wanting to do there. We met with a couple different companies, one being Iowa Sound and Stage, that puts on a lot of different acts throughout central Iowa. They do a lot of rentals. And we asked them, based on different size of bands, how big does that flat podium area need to be? What do they need from an electrical standpoint? What do they need on those overhangs up there if they want to hang their lights off of that? So we've been working with the the Smith Group team in the design of that, the weights that can hold those type of things to match up with the events that we do there. Certainly, we're not trying to be what Riverview is doing, where they could have 10 or 15,000 people concerts, or even the amphitheater at Waterworks Park. We're really kind of trying to fit in that niche. What we do with Clive Festival, 2, 3, 4,000 max people. That's what the lawn will fit. We basically took out the layout what we did last year and laid that on the festival lawn, and actually gives us a little bit more space than what we typically have in a year there. So we want to make sure that it fit for what we do on a pretty regular basis.
How close is that to the trail, Richard?
So the trail will actually be adjusted to the east behind the stage. So essentially, not exact, but the post for that will almost be exactly where the middle of the trail is now, to give you kind of a frame of reference. And then the trail will be adjusted to the east behind it so that that can stay open when we have events and concerts.
Will that stage have the capacity for electrical and all the other needs that any kind of bands or production would have, so we don't have to run cords back and forth?
Yep. So the hope is that as we start to get through the final construction drawings, that we can hide that behind those posts. So they'll be able to hook up and get all their hookup done that way. So we're not having to run cables from the special events building. So we'll have all the power that we need there with outlets behind that. Yeah, I think it's gonna work pretty well.
Along that same line, have we considered prepping the space or having, solar panels on any of these areas, like even for the special events building, the outcropping? I'm not necessarily saying we budget for the solar panels today,
Yeah.
but let's not have to dig up what we just did.
So we haven't looked at it for the stage just because it's not that big of a space, but we are definitely looking at it for the special events building as well as the aquatic center. So at least with this Greenbelt Landing project, it'll just be re-roofing the existing building. But in one of the upcoming CAP years, actually CEP years for the aquatic center, next year is the year to re-roof the other 2 buildings. So we're going to work with Pete as part of that process to see how we can get solar on all 3 of those buildings at the same time. And the great thing about them is there's nothing to the south that will be an obstruction from a tree standpoint anytime soon, because the pool's there and there's not going to be trees in there anytime.
The only thing I would say, even though that is a relatively small space for solar, I mean, you'd be surprised what it could produce to even create plugins just for what you want to run, for a concert or for a show.
Yeah, we could certainly, when we
look at it.
tackle that, have Pete and I, we can work on and see if that's a possibility, or if that would pencil out. Be happy to do that.
Okay, so I'm not hearing any additional questions on that area. So one more click. And I believe we were talking about the playground location. There's, it's a quite large area. So the site plan sheet that shows the whole is fairly small, but there's a zoomed in view that shows, I believe at this point, a concept for the playground equipment. I'd have to defer to Richard to talk about specific which kind of structures were selected to be put in there. But you can see that's the area it's located off of. There's some seating nearby, just off the festival lawn. It is near to the parking, as well as to the trail. So it should have good access for families and others that are using the space.
Richard, I know we've talked about the concepts and the equipment on there. What kind of input did we get from the community on what we chose for the playground?
So we haven't had any specific conversations with a wider community on that. What we did, at least from the perspective of the all-inclusive, all ages, all abilities, we worked with a designer that actually specializes in designing those type of playgrounds to make sure that we hit all the different elements. So people with physical, other different types of disabilities, people that have trouble walking, how can people of all ages from, half-a-year-old to 80 years old, how interact with that. So we did work with them on that type of design, but we haven't done a specific actual public meeting on what people would want to see in that.
People with new knees.
And this was the
New knees.
this was the one, just to remind the council too, where this is the big partnership for this project with Variety. So they are bringing the in-kind, basically dollars, roughly $800,000 to make this playground a reality.
Is that the Ashley Oakland?
Yep.
Correct. This will be the largest, I think, actually,
Pretty close.
playground, all-inclusive playground. Yep.
And I'll have renderings in a few more slides after Amanda's done her slides.
Can we take a step backwards and go to the stage area and that. I really want to focus actually on, no, nope, you can go to that next one. The parking lot. I get it. I understand the parking. I understand at the festival, we don't have enough parking, but that's always going to be a problem regardless, right? I mean,
Absolutely, for a
my
big event
point
like
would
that.
be, do we really need that much concrete? I mean, seems like we need more grass and grounds and all that, and we can park folks to the south, and we can park folks across the street. You're doing that anyways. And so we need all that concrete sitting there for 98% of the year. It's just running off into the creek. I mean, can't we creep out some green space into that parking?
Yeah, so I would say is there's not actually probably very much additional concrete with the parking lot. It's more in how it's oriented and how we're improving the function through that. So there, I mean, to the main extent, it actually almost extends all the way down to the special events building now, but it's not very easy to use. It's difficult to get there. So most of the work that we're doing to the parking lot is actually just increasing the functionality of how the parking lot flows. It looks like a little bit more concrete in the way it's kind of broken up and how we get that turnaround there by the special events building. But from a functional standpoint, it's not a lot of additional concrete.
I'm just talking from the north of that parking, of
Mhm.
of the concrete, not your new flow, because the flow today really stinks. right?
Yeah, absolutely.
fix
We get that.
Big need.
Mhm.
But the concrete to the north there of, I don't even know where to tell you, just straight over from CS 104, right? And you come over.
Mhm.
I mean, that concrete's never used, but maybe 2% of the
Well,
time.
I guess the question,
Aquatic
my question
center.
is that
Yeah.
true for the aquatic center
Yeah.
on our busiest days? How full does that?
I would say that we do need that pretty much all entire aquatic season. There's a lot of days where we're actually overflowing up the hill with the aquatic season. So I don't think we wouldn't want to pull back on the amount of spaces that we have there just because of how busy the aquatic center is most of the time. And even when we have special events, so when we have the Clive Festival, when we have Cabin Fever Relief, or when we have some of the food truck based events, we're filling up most of that
Yeah,
parking
but we'll
lot.
never have enough for
Yeah.
those, right? We'll never have enough for those. But
Yeah, no, absolutely. But yeah,
95% of the time.
yeah, I think we feel like it's probably the right amount of spaces, and that's why we didn't add more spaces when we did this design, because some of the original concepts actually had called for adding additional spaces on the west-hand side of it, closer to 114th Street. So what we will try to do is fix that functionality of flow through the parking lot, but keeping the same number of spaces.
I think to your point, Councilmember McCoy, too, we are, one thing that is really interesting about this site plan is we're enhancing the stormwater management of that
Mhm.
runoff off the parking lot to the north, much better than the way it's laid out today. So I think we recognize that we have some significant runoff to manage. Of course, we've got other flow coming down from the south with the pipe that's just to the east of 114th Street. But hopeful with the wetland walkway and that wetland is we're now treating it like we would under our new standards versus the old standards that this was originally designed in.
So right now, everything from the parking lot in the site goes straight into Walnut Creek from the storm sewer. It's not treated anyway. Once water hits concrete, it goes in storm drain and goes into Walnut Creek. And like Matt just said, everything now after this project's done, will go through a treated wetland drain to get all those solids and the oils and stuff like that out before it hit Walnut Creek. So the water quality coming from this site should be significantly better in all but the biggest storms.
And you've anticipated the next section for the pedestrian and vehicular enhancements. So I think that was a pretty good overview of the vehicular. So I'll just point out a couple specifics. For the pedestrian, I am personally very excited about the connection to the lower level City Hall parking lot that is circled up in the top left. I think that'll be a great addition getting there. And then I generally highlighted the portion of trail that is new, that's connecting to new locations. And then of course the boardwalks within the wetland areas are also a pedestrian addition, but we had already discussed those. So with that, really exciting project, lots of great things to help enhance the area. We did have discussions for, well, Richard's team for the Parks, Recreation and Public Art Board on this project at their meetings in September and January. And Planning and Zoning Commission did consider the site plan at their January 4th meeting, and they did recommend approval. Staff did not receive any comments through the site plan process. But I'm sure Richard may have comments on the other engagement they had done. So with that, staff does recommend approval. The outstanding comments in the comment letter are all additional details that will be addressed with the construction drawing submittal. This project's a little different in that it's really all public improvement. So some of those details we are still having finalized for that final review. But the site plan is not expected to have any significant changes.
Excited about some of the, the whole project to begin with, but on the building, I think there's some great enhancements. I think we're going to see former rentals for the space as we look at the enhancements to the outdoor space, the outdoor fire pit. In addition to that, what are we doing on the inside of that? I know we're doing some modifications there. Rich, could you talk more about that?
Yeah. I'd be happy to. Actually, that's the first item on the project update. Yeah, that's a perfect tee off. So, Amanda gets the boring kind of construction drawing and site plan documents. I get all the color and fun stuff here. So the first one is the community building renovations. So this gives you a feel on what it's going to look like coming in from the parking lot there. The existing building on the right-hand side and the new covered patio on the north of it. A couple different things here that is different than how it functions now. If you're paying enough attention, you'll notice on the aquatic center, the band right below the roof is blue out there now. So that will be transitioned to a green tile as part of this to tie more into the city's brand and the colors of the city. A couple other things out here. We're going to move the main entrance from the side, which you can see is the restroom sign door there now. That will become a public restroom for both the facility. And then when it's not being rented, it'll actually be able to be used for the public. And the way that the design is being done, we'll be able to separate that use there. And then the main entrance will be straight in here with a new kind of double doorway in there. So, now in cold weather, you open the door, you just get all that cold air in there. That will help cut that down, keep it a little bit more climate controlled. And then the last thing I'm going to point on this image is you see these little seat wall, foot wall things there. So that is a couple kind of a dual purpose thing. It's dual purpose in a way that it helps to define that outside space that's being created as part of the covered patio area, but then also it'll double as flood protection for the facility. So in the event of, I believe it's a 100-year flood, that theoretically could get water in it. And so what this does, it helps protect most of the facility and keeps these small openings that we have to protect. So rather than having to protect the whole building, we have to protect these small gaps and openings. So we can either sandbag them or find other ways to protect that in an aqueduct. We have talked about that as we could throw some of those out there, or there's some other things that are newer kind of technologies that you can throw down very quickly that take the place of sandbags, that the flow of the water pushing against it actually holds it. So we're investigating options like that. But I think the main point is that it will hopefully reduce the amount of area we have to protect in a large flood event when time is of the essence on Walnut Creek. So just a little bit, as you start to walk in here, you can start to see what that will look like for people, that kind of double entrance, the double-sided fireplace, and then how we can kind of, brand it and kind of recognize the facility.
Michael, do you have a question?
Yeah, and this can happen at any time, but I've looked at these plans. I love it. I think it's great. It's where we need to head. I do have a little concern on Eric had brought up reservations and that type of thing. Hopefully we get a plan that we can all agree on how much. Look, I love your programming, right? Through parks and through the library. It's unbelievable what we do in small spaces here in Clive and the programs we put out. But we do have, I think every city has a little Achilles, and that's over programming to the point of the outside public can't rent the space. And we have a bit of that now, right? With the space next door here and the space over there. And really the suburbs are short in that sweet spot of rental space. And so hopefully we balance that well.
100%. We've already started to talk about that as a team and how we want to do that to maximize the public's ability to use that. I think the biggest areas we're going to want to protect for the public to be able to rent is probably the Friday, Saturday, and Sundays. Those are going to be the most popular days. And so, it's going to be finding that balance. How can we have the space available for some of our programming, but not take away what are probably the most popular times for people to rent it and use it? And especially with this enhanced space like this is going to really provide opportunities for people if they maybe want to have an outdoor wedding at the stage, and then they can maybe come over here and have a reception or a gathering afterwards. So thinking about how people may use this, and how we want them to use it. We're going to work to find ways to kind of balance that out. You're 100% right on that.
Thank you.
So just kind of a transition here. So see what it looks like from the other side. So this is the under what it looked like a patio setup with some tables and chairs. The bottom two left images are kind of precedent images on what the ceiling is going to look like. So what you'll see inside there right now, there's that drop ceiling that kind of comes down to almost the top of the windows. We're going to elevate that as much as possible. And I think it's in the neighborhood of another 1 to 2 feet. It's probably closer to 2 feet that we're able to elevate that ceiling. We're going to the north and the northeast corners are going to have floor to ceiling windows. So you can kind of bring that green belt in more. And it's going to really create a total different look and feel for that space. So just kind of give you a feel, this is what it's going to look like. We're at the east end of the building looking west towards the kitchen. So you see the revamped kitchen area there, but and then you see that door. That door is what will separate the rental facility from the restroom so that people have the ability, if it's not being rented, we could open that outside door and let the public use that. So have a more functional, probably likely year-round restroom that the public can use. So next one is we're kind of orienting over there to the festival ground on the stage. And so this image is kind of show. Yeah, absolutely.
Back to community building right there, you know, called that community building, the special events building. Both, I think there's an opportunity here to involve the public to really come up with a better name. I don't know if you said the special event center, if anyone would know exactly where it is. Community building, I don't know. This gives us an opportunity to perhaps put this out to the public and get input from the public and we, you know, have some kind of a vote. There's some kind of a name that's reflective of this building, whether it's something like the green belt or whatever it is. But I think we have an opportunity here to be original and get the community involved in this and make it a fun thing.
Agree. It'd be a great opportunity to rebrand it when the construction's complete.
Rebranding is exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, because I know Matt and I've talked about it a lot, and I know Matt doesn't like the special events name because it doesn't really tell you anything, like you just said.
Well, and part of what we were doing too with the features, if you go back just real quick to the entrance feature, is now that we're fixing the drive and the circulation, what you're going to see now is you're going to be able to see that what's on the screen as you're driving down so you can find the building. Right. That's been one of our biggest problems because of the way the circulation was really set up for buses. Now you're going to, and that drop off that we've had in front of the aquatics, and now that we're straightening that out with a speed table, you know, as you go across for the drop off area, you're going to be able to see that. So we, you know, as a part of the fundraising piece, you know, there was an option for, you know, for somebody if they, you know, wanted to potentially put their brand associated with the building itself. That was the largest ask. We didn't have anybody who necessarily we secured that with. We think we're still really close on the patio side of it, but that doesn't necessarily give them the naming rights for the whole building. And so we were kind of in that space on it. So for what you see here, you know, we wanted to at least put a kind of a standard name to it. Again, go away from the special events piece. Community building, that's what a lot of communities are used to calling their main community center building or community building, and to see what opportunities we would have in the future for that to change. But it was very important for us to kind of have that visual change too, to make it easier to know people to know where the building is at, because that's been a struggle since it's been built.
From a fundraiser perspective, have we thought about, you know, oftentimes they'll have bricks where the public can buy a brick and they put their name or their family's name on it. We thought about any opportunities to do that as well?
Save that thought.
Yeah.
Because you're going to hear related to the wetland walkway.
I don't want to get ahead.
Weaver, you are looking at the patio, right, and how it orients out to that parade field type thing so that onlookers can watch me whoop you in bags in the future. So that, but that just keep that in
Where
mind.
the permanent bag section.
Keep that in mind at some point.
One thing I say before I jump on to the next part of the project, the kind of plan overview here shows you can see this is that doorway. So then the restrooms can be separated from that, open to the public. But then also you can see what that little seat wall does to define that room as part of the space, and how in most weather, it could be effectively functionally double the amount of space that building can have for people and host. So, you know, right now, I think our capacity is 120. You could probably easily have events where you have 200 people show up and not feel crowded on that. So that's a nice space. Then that wall also helps define it from the rest of the site. So it feels a little bit more private if you are renting the facility.
It also provides more seating too. It's basically a seat wall.
Yep. So there's that. So moving on to the stage and festival grounds, this gives you a little bit of an orientation of how the design of the stage itself kind of mimics and works together with the new patio of over the special events community building, whatever we're going to eventually call it.
Greenbelt Center.
Yes. Then moving kind of to the west northwest here, this is the wetland and wetland walk area. So Amanda talked a lot about this, but it'll be a really great experience in a lot of different ways that doesn't exist within our park system, but there's very few experiences like this within central Iowa that will really be a nice attraction and a unique attraction that'll bring more people to this site. So part of this is creating this place, this community. You know, it's been very one-dimensional up to this point with the pool. This will now start to take it where maybe you come to the pool, you go outside and have lunch. We maybe invite ice cream trucks over the lunch hour during a hot summer day. They're going out there playing on the playground right there, or maybe they want to go for a walk on this wetland walkway. And the cool thing about this is there's going to be a lot of different places to sit, interact, and give you different views of the creek, of the greenbelt. You're going to get different experiences. There's places where you're going to walk through the mature trees that exist out there today and will stay after this is over. You'll be able to get down. Most of that wetland will actually have standing water throughout the year. And the boardwalk will get within 12 to 18 inches of that on a regular day. So you'll get different experiences that you don't get out there today or pretty much anywhere in central Iowa. So it's going to be a really unique opportunity that starts to extend the amount of time and people that come to this site and really can enjoy it throughout the year.
Which one's the fishing pier, Richard?
The fishing pier will be located off the pond to the east of the stage. So no fishing pier here, but it'll be just to the east of the stage.
You looking for the boat launch or the fishing?
The fishing, but that's right behind the stage.
Yeah, so the pond will actually be where we do the fishing pier. Then it'll be fully accessible, so anyone can get down there and really be a nice amenity there.
And Michael, you said the boat launch, that's part of the Icon Trail.
Yes.
How does that fit into this whole equation?
I'm not sure if actually, I'll go back real quick. So here's the wetland walk and the boardwalk there. Here's the bridge that currently crosses Walnut Creek, the trail bridge that crosses there. The creek access kayak launch, tube launch, just access down to Walnut Creek will be just off the end of that, and it'll kind of wind its way down here and dump out into Walnut Creek. The cool thing about this is the way the sandbars have kind of set up, this will just end at a sandbar that is typically out there most of the time. So people will be able to get out there and explore and really provide a nice opportunity for people to access Walnut Creek. And then the fishing pier is right here at the kind of southwest corner of the pond.
One thing I will mention too, is he's flipping back, it's the Polk County Wetland Walkway, because they've sponsored that. It's the Mid-American Stage. They've sponsored that. And then the
Polk County Festival Grounds.
Polk County Festival Grounds. And then the launch is Icon and
they didn't actually ask for any naming recognition, but they paid for it with their grant.
That's right. They don't have any naming rights to it, but that was supported. And then we also still have, as Richard will get to at the end with all the fundraising that's been done, a public art grant from Bravo and Icon to tie with Nick McNCMIC grant or donation related to public art. So some pretty big partners.
What do we have left then, Matt?
He's got his last slide covers that. So
that'll be in my pitch for the last couple bucks.
That's right.
A couple slides ahead of me on everyone. So Amanda alluded to the rendering for the playground. So this is the proposed playground out here, again, working to try to go with the Clive theme and some of the nature. So we picked colors that weren't too bright and obnoxious, like you can see, and there's nothing wrong with that, but maybe just felt like that was the right place for that out here. So picking a theme that really works with the Greenbelt and the nature, and then also starting to tie back into the Greenbelt Master Plan districts. So this being the Oxbow district, we're really trying to look at in some of the ways we do this, even with the musical play, it's going to mimic natural things like mushrooms and flowers and those type of things. And then finally, when we look at that rubber safety surface, we wanted to find a way to work in that Oxbow theme. So the rubber surface below it will likely be like green, like the green belt around it. And then winding its way through and under some of the bridges on the playground will be essentially like Walnut Creek. But then there's areas where oxbows have been kind of carved out and mimic that. And the way this flow wise will be coming through the site and through this actually will dump out into the small little water play area that we have right here that then dumps into the wetland itself. So trying to bring those themes of the nature and the oxbows and everything we do here. Those stars on there can also be opportunities for us to do some educational signage, talking about the creek, what we're doing with this in ways that really become storytelling like Pete talks about. And so much what we do, it's a way to educate kids and people that come out to this of what we're doing, why we did it, and what was the purpose of it. And so it really creates some really cool themes into the larger greenbelt itself.
And all this stuff will be flood proof, correct?
As flood-proof as things can be. Yep, you know, the rubber surface is obviously gonna have to be washed off. The playground's probably gonna have to washed off after a big flood. So, you know, as much as possible, durable materials, wherever it makes sense.
How often does that rubber surface have to be replaced?
It's probably in the neighborhood. It really depends a lot on use, but the hope is about 20 years with the playground.
Is that the same as the life of the playground equipment itself, 20?
Yeah, yep, generally.
Is
You
that
know,
so for something that our staff can do? I know we've done that on some of the different, that's a big project right here. I just didn't know.
yeah, no, it's typically something we wouldn't want to attempt because to get it right, you really have to have training in that. And we just don't have the training in that. You want to be able, you know, it's a combination of mixing a kind of a liquid glue that hardens pretty quickly. You have to be able to trowel it out to get it smooth. You want to make sure that you get the fall surface heights correct on that. Generally, this nice surface that you see doesn't extend the entire depth. It's usually just the top ½ inch or an inch. And below that is a larger kind of bigger aggregate of shredded rubber and tires underneath there that forms most of that. And so it's not something we really attempt or want to try to do just because of the specialty of it.
I've got a place that'll donate those rubber tires and
We like that.
and shingles. Yeah.
For free, right?
For free.
So the next element of this is the food truck grove. This is an area just on the west side of the event lawn. Basically, it parallels that east edge of the parking lot. This is basically a little informal seating area with some permanent picnic benches out there, some kind of cantina style lights that will hang from some poles just above that. It's a place that people can hang out during events, or if they just want to come have lunch. You can see here, hopefully be right next to where we do the food trucks, so that can kind of mingle back and forth with people. So hopefully inviting more food trucks to come out, more people to come out, and creating that larger community and destination on a regular basis. So kind of jumping into project budget, like you asked about. So total, we're still sitting at the $10.6 million estimated cost for that, all design, contingency, all of those things. Total funding, we have well over 9.5 million committed right now. We're actually probably closer to the neighborhood of 10 to 10.1 of committed dollars, as well as in-hand funding from the city's funding and grants that we already have. This is a list of all the major donations, grants, partners that we have on this so far. You can see, like Matt talked about, the estimated cost of the playground from the in-kind donation from Variety. We have grants from Iowa Finance Authority, EPA for their water quality grant that Pete was able to work with our congressional delegation to get that approved last year. I wanted to note on the Clive Community Foundation and all the effort that they've been putting into this. While their contribution to this doesn't maybe come direct dollars from them, they have been so instrumental in making connections in the community, getting us indoors, and really helping. So while their commitment was 300,000, really what they brought is a lot more of that to the table, and either through in-kind donations or help at events, going out and opening those doors. And then you can see here just all the way down to the $5,000, and then an additional 75 on top of that of smaller miscellaneous private donations that gets us pretty close to where we're at. Matt alluded, we're working on hopefully one final naming rights donation for the outdoor plaza that hopefully we can bring forward in the next month. We just submitted another grant to Destination Iowa for $500,000. And so we hope that if either or both of those are successful, that it's really going to set us up for 100% success on this, and really, really get us right on the gate here when we start construction.
You know, Richard, there looks like an opportunity for perhaps Dallas County to get involved in this as well. Supervisor Hanson, just wanted to throw that out there.
Perhaps that's why he's here.
Announce a large.
The one thing the question you did ask about private ways for smaller donations and people to engage with that. So the wetland walk, there's certain areas that have railing, And so we're working on opportunities where people will be able to buy at a smaller dollar amount, a recognition similar to if you've gone to Grays Lake, they have plaques along the bridge there. We're doing something, an opportunity like that here this summer. Once we're getting a little bit closer to construction, that will be a great opportunity for people to have more buy-in to that on an individual basis. So we're looking at getting those announced probably here early this spring. We'll also have opportunities for people still to, if they want to sponsor a bench or ultimately maybe a flower bed or a tree out there as well. So kind of working on that as we get right to that final push. As we talk about groundbreaking, we'll also be able to talk about some of those smaller opportunities for people to get engaged as they start to see the project happen. So just a little bit about schedule. So a little bit off here. So off by a day on site plan approval. So we have that here tonight. We're looking at by the end of the month, having 90% construction drawings ready for staff review, the comments that Amanda talked about. The permits are underway with the Iowa DNR as well as the Army Corps of Engineers. We anticipate that we'll have those sometime in March. Also at the same time, we'll finish up on those construction drawings in March with hopefully looking at April, putting the project out to bid. Hopefully in May, receiving bids and having a contract for the council to award at that point, with construction looking at beginning hopefully in June and hopefully wrapping up right before Clive Festival in 2025.
How does that affect the aquatic center parking during the summer season next year?
Yeah, so the parking lot, or the way the contract will be written, is that the parking lot or any of the work on the parking lot cannot be done during the pool season. So that May to Labor Day time period, that'll be one of the probably the few kind of restrictions we put on a contractor to do that, because that's so critical to the pool success. So they will be able to do that before or after the pool season to handle that, just to make sure that doesn't impact the pool season. Otherwise, right now what we're doing is we're working with DCI Group. They are starting to get their bid packages put together and how they'd like to see it bid out, anticipating probably 5 to 7 different bid packages for the different elements, but they're still kind of sorting through that and making sure that they've got that bunched up. Also starting to do some kind of preliminary reach out to potential contractors to let them know that this is something that's becoming, and kind of see where they're thinking some of their workloads will be, so that they know when this comes out to bid that there's opportunity. And we'll continue to do that work and keep going on that until we're ready to the point to get it out to bid.
With this construction schedule in mind, have we agreed on a final place to hold the 24 Clive Festival?
Yeah, so that is the last thing. Thank you. So one of the things is we thought
on this whole thing all night, or?
It just shows we anticipated the question.
So one of the things we thought would be a possibility that we maybe could have at our current location in 2024, but with the parameter not being able to do any parking lot stuff during the pool season, we didn't want to throw an additional kind of restriction on there, especially because it'd be more important for us to have it completed and ready to use for the 2025 Clive Festival. So our recommendation is that we're going to move up the hill off of Campus Drive here for the 2024 season. This is just kind of our first run at how we think that layout might work. So up along that kind of little section, we closed down Campus Drive from 114th over to the access into the gravel parking lot area there. That's where the portable restrooms and food trucks would be at. We'd have the vendors just south of that. And then this would be kind of the festival area with the tents, the stage, and the beverages and other things you can purchase, or people that you can kind of stop by and talk to. Inflatables will be up here. And then the slip and slide would continue to be at its typical location right here. So from a standpoint, it actually gives us a little bit more room than we typically have down below. So we'll be able to spread out just a little bit, but still works very well from the standpoint. We can still utilize all the same parking areas that we use. We can still use the parking lot from the aquatic center, all the surrounding parking lots. The fireworks can still stay at the same location and actually might give people a little bit better view, being up on the hill a little bit, but I think it'll work out for 2024 pretty well.
That's also a great opportunity to educate the public on what the plans are for this portion of Greenbelt Triad. And
yeah, absolutely.
Perfect.
And our hope is, again, target would be that the grand opening of Greenbelt Landing would be the 2025 Clive Festival. But we'll see how bids come out, weather, construction schedules, lead times for materials, all that fun stuff that we still have to work out. But that is our internal target, is for that to be the opening of the new Greenbelt Landing.
And one thing I would say, we're going to celebrate before as a groundbreaking. But so stay tuned for later this spring. We're not going to get too excited about a date yet until we actually have permits. So, but once we get permits in hand, we'll be working with Pete and we'll get a big party to celebrate the groundbreaking of this here, hopefully in May or June sometime.
We have a lot of folks to celebrate with too that are investors and stakeholders in this project. We want to make sure we do that right.
Yep.
With all of them and the groundbreaking and the ribbon cutting.
Very good.
I
Yeah.
don't want to be the downer every time I discuss. but However,
Stay consistent though.
right. We talked about on the concrete side on subs and things, and this is a major bid, right? Where you're gonna get a lot of the same business companies bidding for this that we've had in the metro. And it's one worry that a lot of them have of who can bid and who shouldn't bid. I think we need to take a hard look at that prior to putting this out and receiving these bids, right? There are folks, and this is a legal counsel question, but there are folks that have, multiple lawsuits going on inside central Iowa and others with cities and other government agencies because of the building. And it's consistently one or two companies that are in this. Certainly, I'd love to see, the legislators gave us a little room here in the last few years, but I'd like to see us take a little bit of more of aggressive action of unresponsible bidders as a council and take that on. And, again, we can talk about that offline of some of the names, but they're significant, right? And lawsuits with significant amount of cities, the same players.
Do we not require that any subs be identified in their bid response so that we can evaluate that?
So I'll defer to DCI on some of that, but what I will say is one of the key steps that we made with this project is bringing on DCI as a construction manager and then having them help frame the bid packages. So this worked very well for us for the public safety building because of the way they packaged the prime contracts. It kind of put us in a position that was very specific for each functional areas. And we were fortunate, at least in that case, where it was a really good bidding environment to get good contractors, good prime contractors that were responsible. And then DCI was holding them responsible as
And
our.
it's the prime in this case I'm talking about, right?
So this could have 5 to 7 prime contracts as Richard, we had 11 for the public safety building, whereas DCI functioned as that general contractor as our agent. And they'll be doing the same for this project as well as when we remodel this building. And so our hope is we've recommended those choices. We've made those choices, recommended them to you to put us in the best position for exactly what you're talking about. That's allowed under Iowa law. But I would agree that if we do see certain contractors bidding on this that have those litigation issues, we'll definitely be referring those to legal counsel. How far can we push it? Because we've seen the issues that some of those contractors, cities, and I would also throw school districts in on that for some of those contractors where
And
it's been challenging.
Same consistent, the graphite, the road shop, I mean, it's just the same name every time, right?
Mhm.
And the legislators hold one hand behind our backs and you gotta take the lowest bidder. Well,
Most
qualified.
responsible,
So
most
let's
responsible
figure out
bidder.
what qualified means on a legal side of it, right? Because
One other note about
Thinking.
the bidding environment for this, there is significant federal money in this project that's going to bring significant federal requirements, which has a way sometimes of thinning out some of the folks who aren't willing to kind of live up to those higher standards.
And that was another reason why we looked to DCI too as a CM who has experience working on federal and state funded projects that has, because of all the grant complexity that we have with this, is that was a big thing as a part of that interview process for construction managers that we asked about is what's your experience with these kind of complex funding scenarios, and they had experience in that, which was really good because they do a lot of work for the state.
Any other questions for Richard? We're looking to.
I'll move approval of the site plan.
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote?
Aye.
Clerk, please post that vote. And the vote on the site plan.
Mine's not popping up. Aye.
Thank you for that. Yes. So the site plan is approved by a vote of 5-0. Continuing with Amanda, we have the Clive Development Standards Manual. Proceed, Amanda.
Yes, sorry, I was getting reconnected there. So tonight we have to present to you the final version of the 2024 edition of the Clive Development Standards Manual. This manual was last updated in 2000. So really the idea behind this update is to modernize some of our requirements because there's been changes in like material standards and technology, as well as to address any kind of discrepancies we've had with various policies and changes over the last 20 plus years. And so the manual, and then additionally, we wanted to make it a little more user friendly, add some graphics, make it a little easier to navigate. So we've been able to bring in, linking out to other resources we reference, things of that nature. So the first half approximately of the manual is process and procedure updates. There aren't really, for the most part, any changes in those process and procedures from how we operate today. Aside from one thing that staff has discussed recently, and that's a change to how we'd like to handle inspections related to temporary certificates of occupancy, specifically for site landscaping and stormwater management facility landscaping. We've been having challenges with various commercial projects over the years because when staff goes out to do our site inspection, maybe there's a tree or two that is not doing well or has died, and we mark it off and say, hey, you got to replace this tree before you can get your certificate of occupancy. And then they finish up their building details, and now we've sat through July, August, and we're into September. So they're finally ready to transition to their full certificate of occupancy. Planning staff goes back out. 2 different trees have now died because it's been the hottest months, most difficult time for those. So that's really the issue we're trying to help with here, is just that recurring, basically having to kick the can over landscaping that isn't performing well. So what we're proposing is that the landscaping at the time of the final inspection is going to focus on if the plants have been installed. And then we will implement a springtime, or depending on when the project was done, it could potentially fall in the fall, but a recheck for the condition on the landscaping. So that we're thinking will actually result in fewer staff visits to the site. It will also give us a better quality of landscaping because we will then know roughly a season later if the plants are doing well or not. And so we're hoping that that overall will involve less staff time and better long-term outcomes. We also had some concerns with when we put landscaping on a temporary certificate of occupancy related to the stormwater management facilities, and sometimes those landscaping are part of the function of the facility. So this will now clarify that in order for you to get that TCO, you do have to have either the functional landscaping established, or if not, there needs to be some sort of interim stabilization plan so we know that that facility is not getting fouled in the intervening months. So that will, again, hopefully address some of these issues and challenges we're having towards the end of projects and getting things wrapped up. So that's really the only change from how we're currently operating in the first half of the manual. And that's more of a standardization of the practice. Planning, building, and water resources work together on the language for that section. The other sections are all related to kind of the requirements and standards. So signs was a big one that we have talked about before. This is a new section to the manual. The ordinance requirements and our interpretations policies are not changing at all from what we have discussed previously with the recent sign ordinance amendments. This really is just getting a lot of graphical representation, photo examples, things of that nature to respond to what staff gets is the most frequent questions and the things we see as most often requiring a plan set to be resubmitted and cause multiple reviews on the sign permits. Site lighting, we've also discussed somewhat previously with various commercial site plans. So 20 some years ago, we didn't really have the LED lights everywhere. So this update is really in response to getting to the current technology. We've also provided additional information on what to include specifically on their plans with the development submittals. That was another area where we were frequently having to have a lot of back and forth because applicants just weren't getting all of the necessary information together for staff to review the lighting plans. And we have been using this recommendation, or what we're recommending, with developers over the past year or so. And we have found that they've pretty much all been willing to implement that. And we've been able to more or less ground truth that these are reasonable lighting standards to minimize the negative impacts on adjacent properties, particularly residential, while also keeping in mind that it is a suburban context that does require site lighting for all the vehicular travel. Landscaping and open space. Again, this has all been reorganization and clarifying. There haven't really been any content changes, and that's because staff has not updated the landscaping ordinance yet in the zoning chapter. So we can't use a policy manual to change an ordinance requirement. So we've added a little bit of clarification, some graphics here. You can see a side profile example of a berm. We get a lot of questions on that through our projects. And then also we've clarified some of the species diversity expectations for site plans. That's stuff that we're doing anyway in reviews, but this will just give some early information again to developers and designers. We do anticipate additional changes to this section once we do the ordinance updates, and those are hopefully happening during this fiscal year. The bulk of the update really focuses, aside from the organization, on our architectural standards. And there's kind of two sections to that. There's elements, like design elements, and then there's materials. So our intent with this isn't really to change the end products that we're seeing in Clive, because we are getting good projects, primarily with decent design, working through the process with staff and the designers. Our intent is really to provide clearer directions to them up front about what we expect and how the city wants to see different elements integrated. So we have, again, a lot of visual examples in this. You can see a couple examples of the style of large expanse walls we do not want. And then it gets much more detailed into calling out different features and ways that those can be utilized to break up the big massing on some of our suburban buildings. So there are a couple specific requirements that are being added. One is that there has to be an architectural element at least every 50 horizontal feet. We did extend that to 75 feet for our properties or our faces that aren't really public access, which isn't just street facing. That would also be like areas that are general public access for like just using the site circulation wise. And then also, if a building is above 30 feet in height, there will be requirements for vertical changes as well with some of these different options that you see there. The other big portion of the architectural standards, I said, is the exterior materials. Our current limits new development to utilizing brick, stone, or similar substantial material. We get a lot of questions on what similar substantial material means. Can they use Nichi-Ha? Can they use EFIS products? A lot of things that are not as robust of a product as like a brick or stone, whether that be natural or manufactured. So our proposed manual is actually providing additional flexibility than what our current language has today. We've included additional materials in our explanations of kind of where those should land as far as a primary, secondary, or trim material. And then again, the aesthetic outcomes are not intended or expected to be significantly different. Additionally, what staff has done is research the ASTM material standards and found specific requirements to ensure that things like the thin veneer brick which is now a much more robust material and installation methods than it was 20 some years ago. However, that's if it's a fired brick meeting these certain material standards, because you can still get an inferior quality thin veneer brick that would be marketed for outdoor use. So we've put in some specific requirements to allow those materials to be a primary, so we can ensure that we're still getting the long-term durability and value out of those. Now, I think most of you or many of you may be aware that there is a bill in the Iowa Senate right now, SF, I believe 174, related to exterior design elements, I believe for residential buildings, which does include multifamily up to 12 units. I don't think there's currently one with language addressing commercial, but there has been in the past. And that bill is actually trying to remove governmental entities' ability to regulate exterior materials and design elements that are not either structurally required, or if the exterior material is listed in one of the national codes as being rated for exterior use, that we would not be able to tell a residential building that they could not use those. So these standards that we're talking about today are all commercial. They would also apply to multifamily. That's less of a concern since we don't have a lot of multifamily projects. That bill has been introduced, I think, in the previous 2 sessions as well, and has not made it through all the way. But staff does feel confident and comfortable recommending that we move forward with adoption here, particularly since this is actually giving additional flexibility. So we aren't making things more restrictive. If that was the case, we might want to hold off, but this is just clarifying and will actually give more options for developers and designers. Site circulation and parking, similar to landscaping, there are really no content changes, again, because the ordinance has to be amended first, which is on the to-do list for strategic planning. And we do expect we'll bring back a new version of the manual for this section in association with those ordinance updates. And then utility standards was a big lift. That was a joint effort between planning, building, public works operations, engineering, and the fire department. There are a lot of various policies and things out there that we got all together and said, okay, what do we want our standard to be? And we did an update. So this should reflect what everyone's current preferences are for those policies and materials. And so there are a couple instances where we do expect we will have to potentially make a change in the manual. There are some pending updates to SUDAS, the statewide urban design standards, as well as, I believe, some pending updates that could impact PROWAG, which is the public right-of-way design guidelines that would have to do with like pedestrian and sidewalks, things of that nature. And additionally, the MUCD traffic manual is also currently has pending updates. So as those kinds of federal and state level documents are updated, staff generally has awareness that those are in process, and we will review the manual in association with when we know those kinds of updates are approved and become the standard. So we know if we need to actually make changes within the development standards manual, or if it's something simpler like updating a hyperlink that we added throughout to help people access specific chapters for reference. So with that, I would take any questions you all may have. And Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of the manual, and staff would also recommend approval of the resolution tonight.
Questions for Amanda? Or
I'll move
action?
a resolution approving the new Clive Development Standards Manual.
Second.
Your motion second, further discussion?
I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Michael.
I appreciate the work done by staff here. I would caution that just personally, I don't have a problem making things. I think you used the word strict, more strict, whatever that term would be. But regardless of what the state legislators are going to do or might do, if that's the right thing for the city of Clive, right? And I probably need a little time, maybe next week I'll talk about this because I'm still kind of digesting what you said, that maybe the state legislators are once again going to be taking away some local control. That's a shocker. Those folks up there do know what's best for every community, regardless of where they live. So I'm glad they're helping us out once again. And hopefully you all know I'm joking there, that they probably should leave their hands off local control. But anyways, that's what I'd say is make the rules for what Clive needs, not for what state legislators might do. We know how that works.
That all.
That is all, sir.
I think we're ready to vote. Would the council please vote?
Aye.
And please post that vote. And that
Boy, I was talking too long.
Happens a lot, doesn't it?
It does.
that does pass by a vote of 5-0. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
Richard, you're next up on Lenan Park.
All right. Let me get the presentation going here real quick. So tonight, we're excited to be here. This is the first check-in with the council on Lanham Park since we hired Smith Group to begin doing the work out there. So before I jump into this, there's a few people here that are gonna help me with this. We're gonna tag team this. So here with me right here is Tom Rogers, one of the landscape architects on the project. Online, I believe we also have Jay Blue and Tony Vandermoose that are also part of the team. And so all four of us are gonna take turns kind of handling different parts of this. But just a quick refresher before let Tom jump into that. So this project is really wait for Matthew to get the presentation up. Let's jump right into it. Thank you. So just a quick refresher on the elements of this project and kind of how we're working through this. So a main part of it, which we're going to spend most of our time on tonight, is the Lanham Park plan, as well as recommendations for construction of phase 1 improvements out there. Additionally, as part of this is a stormwater master plan for the neighborhood surrounding this, Harbach Boulevard phase 2 concept development, so that we can get that out and start to get that phase reconstructed. And then finally, concepts for the 82nd Street Trail Corridor. So how do we get this neighborhood better tied into the larger green belt? Because of kind of how we wanted to orient this to make sure that we could start to get construction underway out there, this follows a little bit atypical situation out there. So we're going to focus all on the park tonight with a little bit of high level work on what they're learning on the stormwater related to the park, because that will relate potentially to some of the phase 1 improvements. So just another quick refresher. This is where we started with Smith Group. This is the high level kind of concept plan for Lanham Park and kind of the area around the Harbach Center that was done as part of that 86th Street neighborhoods plan. So this was a starting spot for them, as well as the work that Pete and I and Amanda had done with the students at Crestview on what they would want to see in a larger park. So with that, I'll turn over to Tom.
Thank you, Richard. Thanks everybody for being here tonight. I'll just walk briefly through the process that we've gone through so far, our recommendations for the overall approach to the park, and then some of the information we have on the master plan. So we sat down with city staff to look at, starting with where Richard showed you with the larger scale plan. And we started to ask some questions about what we really want to happen with this park now and in the future. And we also started to ask what's really happening right now? How does everything work? How does this fit together? And what are your needs? And we developed a list of goals and objectives that we then used to study some alternatives for the park. I'll walk you through all of that. The biggest thing that we heard was to create a future focused plan, to not just try to add on to what was there, but to really think about long-term needs, both for the park itself and for the neighborhood, and how this can contribute to them. So that means the park itself needs to be flexible and adaptable as it develops. We need to match amenities with the neighborhood needs and create that flexibility over time. And then look at the short-term and long-term strategy for the Harbach Center. And I'll show you how we've explored some of those options. Also integrating stormwater for the park, but also beyond the site. Thinking about this as a catalyst for adjacent development, showing improvement to this property, and then how we can contribute to the adjacent areas as well, support neighborhood growth and development, and then celebrate community. This is really a community focused space. So we started with those ideas of what are ways we can handle the Harbach Center, what are minimal impacts we can make, how do we do an insertion with what's there versus what's a bigger, more maximal impact, what can we get from a benefit standpoint if we look a little bit beyond that. How can we handle stormwater? How does it move across the site? If we have a large gathering area like a lawn, how big does that need to be? You can see some of these are large spaces, some of them are a few smaller ones. And then the location and relationships of these key amenities and how parking fits with the site. We narrowed that down to 3 overall concepts. The first one you can see on the left, we called stormwater as an organizer, really looking at how stormwater moves through the site. We already know there's some flooding issues with stormwater in the Harbach Center that is at the low point of the site, and in a big rain event, it does back up into there. So where does water enter the site? How does it naturally move through the site and design around where it wants to go? Second, we really focused on building on the Harbach Center itself. What if it stays there? What if it's remodeled? How can we build around that, and what can it really be? And the third, we said, what if we move it all together? What advantages come out of that? So from that, we developed recommendations for the concept, and we really started to hone in on an overall organization for the site. I'll walk you through that very briefly. First, we really like the idea of stormwater as an organizer. It's a really important component of what needs to happen here. It lets us develop on the site in a really interesting way. It lets us help contribute to what's offsite as well. And we really like the tie to one of your greatest assets, the Greenbelt itself, and how we're really prioritizing stormwater as something that is part of the context and design of the site. It's not just how we're moving water, it's actually an amenity for this park. Second, looking at the Harbach Center, there's really a range of possibilities, from taking the building you have and remodeling it to completely removing the building and then everything in between. So what we thought made the most sense at this point is the location that it is in the southwest corner of the site. The most flexible part of that building is the rec bay facility that's there. The other part, the northeast part, is the hardest to redevelop because of the way that it lays out and it's formatted. So there's an opportunity to reuse that rec bay site and then potentially add a future addition onto that. In the development, we're looking at moving from north to south. So that's something that can evolve and happen over time as well. And it gives you some flexibility for how that might work. Next, we talked about the active amenities on site: futsal, basketball, what else we want to include in the site, and really pushing those to the perimeter so they're active and visible and seen by the community so they can see all of that great activity happening. Connecting play with that as well, making sure that that's at the perimeter and combining play, both playground and splash play, with a restroom, using that restroom to buffer between the play spaces, which are typically oriented towards younger kids, to the active spaces, which can range in their ages that they're used. Putting a green or a gathering area at the center of the space that everything rotates around, and then a welcoming, flexible plaza that can really connect to the site, the future development site, or the existing and potentially future redevelopment site to the west, and then really being connected and accessible to the neighborhood. This park should be a catalyst for what can happen in the community and how everybody can come together, making sure there's lots of ways to get in and out of this facility and really making it more connected to the neighborhood. So in addition to that, we have been working on the idea of a festival street on the west side that could also do some stormwater management, and then keeping the northwest parcel open and green at the time being. So that does offer a flexible lawn area that can be used. Jay Blue is online, and he's a landscape architect, project manager for the project. He's going to walk through some of the more detailed pieces of the design itself.
Yeah, just like Amanda and Richard earlier, I get to present the pretty picture stuff. So thanks for letting me join you online. I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you tonight. This is what it might look like. This is what Linnean Park might be like based on those diagrams, those party diagrams that Tom just shared with you. So you can see the great lawn, or that flexible lawn space at the core, stormwater kind of winding its way, beginning in sort of the center of the site and winding its way down and around that central core space, pushing the active play areas, basketball, futsal, splash pad, skate, out to the edges. And then what's happening here is that the right side of the Harbach Center has been removed. It basically would have overlapped sort of in that zone that Richard just circled for us, or someone's circling for me. And the old fire station or the fire truck parking area, which is now a rec bay, stays and is remodeled. And we look at creating some sort of new mass on the left side. And this is just a placeholder. We don't know what that looks like. It hasn't been programmed yet to figure out what that looks like, but this might be one solution for how we look at retooling the Harbach Center. So if we jump to the next slide, I think it's always easier to see these kinds of spaces in 3D. And here's just kind of what this space might look like. You can see that great lawn space in the middle, kids playing, or people playing, I shouldn't say kids, maybe it's more than kids, playing futsal and playing basketball. And there's people at the playground, and there's food trucks parked by the Harbach Center, and there's people using the skate park. And this is just kind of giving you a good sense of three-dimensionally what that space might be like. And it's you can see there's a lot of room for a lot of vibrancy, a lot of activity, and a lot of fun at this updated Lannan Park. Next slide, please. All right, diagrammatically, this is what we did. So here's a good example of there's the old Harbach Center right there. You can see how far that existing structure projects today to the right, to the east, and to the north, and the existing parking area. We're really trying to take advantage of the natural flow of the stormwater and pull that stormwater to the low point, which is basically down where that parking lot, it actually receives a little bit of water because Harbach Avenue is high, so water drains in from Harbach Avenue and from the site today, kind of right down where the parking lot meets the building at the old police station lower level. You can see the festival street that we're showing here. We just took a swag at it by showing this particular example, showing approximately 90 spaces. You can see right at the core, you've got the great lawn, a new playground area, a splash play area with restrooms and shade structure. And then we've tacked on to the left side the Craw court and a badminton court, but you could see that could easily fit in the lawn north of futsal. It could easily fit in the great lawn space. There's a lot of flexibility for where those kinds of other types of experiences could go. So let's take a look at what this space might look like on any given day. Here are 300 users in Lannan Park. And you can see there's lots of room for a lot more users, a lot more visitors. But this is what we expected, and basically what we heard at the kickoff meeting happens on a great summer night. Over the course of a day on, I don't know, pick a day, July 7th, you might have 300 to 500 users come through Lannan Park, and they might be in any one of these places. And you can see Lannan Park's got the space for you to accommodate a lot more users. So if we were to look at a special event, maybe if we went to the next slide, maybe here's a concert. What happens if we hosted a concert off the back of the Harbach Center? You can see we've shown a little stage space back there. We use that great lawn for lawn seating for people to be able to view the performers. You've got some food trucks parked by Harbach Center, 650 users out there. And you can still have people at the playground. You can still have people at the splash pad. People can still be up playing basketball or futsal or on the skate park portion, and it doesn't feel congested, and they're not interrupting that concert experience, right? You still have the flexibility for lots of things to be taking place. If we look at one more image, this is just what it might be if you had a festival day out there. And here you can see we've got almost 1,000 people. So taking advantage of that festival street, you got large tents and small tents parked on the festival street. There might be additional food trucks parked out there, maybe some tents on the great lawn. And you could see you don't lose any of the opportunity for people to access and to take advantage of the playground, the splash pad, the basketball courts, the futsal areas, the skate parks. All of these kinds of experiences can happen, still get to the Harbach Center, still get to the library that's in there, still get to the rec bay, and have these kinds of experiences and maintain the flexibility that we heard was so important to this park. Next slide. I'm going to stop, and I'm going to let Tony from my office, from the Smith Group office, talk a little bit about how we're using Lannan Park to help with some stormwater issues in the area.
Hello, thanks for having me. So one of the opportunities with this park was also to use the area to manage off-site water, and for it to be essentially a way as to retrofit a larger portion of the upstream watershed. And so what we currently tentatively are planning for is the exhibit that you're seeing, the large blue areas are the larger watersheds. And that cyan shape is capturing water and bringing it right on the north side of the park. And then that transitions over to the east side and runs south. But that area is 6.5 acres. And we currently have a preliminary plan for what we might be able to do with that water. So if we go to the next slide. What we're looking at doing, unfortunately, the site it does have some fall from north to south. However, it's the existing stormwater infrastructure is very shallow on the site, and so we don't have a great opportunity to put in a deep vault for basically capturing and retaining that flood water from larger storms and slowing it down before it reaches the rest of the system and then ultimately Walnut Creek. But using a shallower system, we can actually capture water. And what we're showing right now for that 6 acres is the pink 100 by 162 is a design system that would be 4 feet high and have 1 foot below that for storage for water that could infiltrate into the native soils. And that would basically be taken off of the existing blue pipe that's running right on the north side of the park to be detained and infiltrate. Additionally, then, off of Alice Avenue, there is a set of inlets right there. And so what kind of formed the thought for the whole park is to allow that water, instead of going into the inlet, to actually stay at the surface. And so to bring that water across the sidewalk and into a bioretention basin that would be used to clean the water for water quality, and then allow it to slowly meander through the site. Additionally, the spray park currently is planned to not be a recirculating system, but to allow the water to discharge. And so that water would actually create a perennial stream for a portion of the meandering. So we'd actually have water expression throughout the year, not just when it's raining. But so then that water would then flow also into the system. And so the other things I'm showing in this exhibit, the system that I've designed right now is a rain store system, and essentially it's a series of egg crates that are stacked on top of each other, such that it provides 94% storage volume, as opposed to a concrete vault, which would be 100% void spaces, but it would have a concrete bottom to it, or a rock system, which would be only 40% voids, and so the footprint would get a lot larger. But this system essentially would allow the 6 acres of off-site area, 6.5 acres, plus the 2 or so acres of phase 1 to be modeled back to pre-settlement meadow standards. And so we're not just taking it to the existing, we're actually taking it all the way back to pre-settlement conditions. And so that allows you then to use that as a credit to future developments if you wanted to. Looking at the bottom left and looking at the shallowness of the utilities, one thing that needs to be addressed is the first phase versus future phases. And so the pipes, like I mentioned, are very, very shallow, and they're also the slope is very, very low. And so after phase 1, the proposal would be that we would connect into the blue line, the blue square on the right side of that portion of the exhibit. And it wouldn't be until future phases where we'd actually be able to run a pipe deeper. But during phase 1, since we're focused on the north part of the site, we don't want to run a large pipe at all the way through. Essentially, you have a nice existing tree line that's going along the property line. And so we wouldn't want to ruin that now. We would want to wait. So essentially, the system would be capable of infiltrating more volume because the outlet would be higher in the first phase. But then in the future phase, we'd get the full benefit of that system. And so that's so then moving on into future phases, that's kind of where we follow the yellow squiggly line, where water could either be expressed back to the surface or into the pipe system, and then work its way down. In the southeast corner of the site, where the darker blue area is, that's visioned partially as a way to manage the water from the future build out, but it's also meant to be a surge volume for the piping system. So the system was almost certainly not designed to handle a 100-year flow all the way through all the way through down to Walnut Creek. And so there is going to be a backwards pressure on the system. So with this area, this volume, which is essentially created by the current parking bay for the police station, would allow water to actually back up to the surface and essentially alleviate other overland flow problems that are going on around the neighborhood where there's additional flooding, and essentially provide a time for the rest of the system to catch up during more intense storms. And so it's a feature that hasn't been fully evaluated yet, but it's something that I think would be a really helpful to basically take some of the pressure off of the existing infrastructure.
What would the depth of that detention pond be?
That's part of the unknown. We'll say. I mean, some of these pipes that I'm evaluating are able to convey the 1-year flow. And I hope that the 1-year versus 100-year flow makes sense to everybody. I don't want to go over anybody's head too much, but they have a very low capacity. And so when you have a lot of water going to a pipe and the pipe can't give all that water back, it's either going to go to the surface or it's going to go backwards up to the next pipe. And so this storage mechanism could be infinitely big to provide the maximum benefit, right? Or it could be as big as it can be to provide the best benefit for the space available. And so depth is kind of going to be a question of programming. So if we really feel that, right now we're showing a skate park there and we feel that the space allocated to the skate park is essential, then this pond gets smaller. If we find that we have an added area that we can use, then it becomes more effective. But it's a percentage of benefit.
But smaller could mean deeper, correct?
Yeah, well,
You could still get your volume out of depth rather than
it's
width.
only as good as the depth of the system, though. So if it's deeper than the conveyance pipe system, then you have a permanent pond afterwards. And so you can have infiltrative losses between storms, but you can't get the water back out.
So dry bottom.
Yeah.
For sure.
I'll maybe just jump in here real quick on this. Part of the reason we had Tony come on tonight is he's just really starting to get into some of that stormwater work, but we knew that the stuff that he talked about at the north end of the park would be impacted by some of the proposed phasing for phase 1. So I think there's a lot that he still needs to work out and kind of figure out how this whole larger system works. But that will be coming back a little bit later once we kind of get the phase 1 worked out, so that he can probably answer those questions better at the next time we kind of do a check-in on here. Because we had him come tonight just because of that infiltration gallery at the north end that we wanted to kind of talk through and want to have enough information. There's been a lot of data gathering of the existing manholes, like he's talked about the depth of the pipes, that he's just starting to get from the survey process that will allow him over the next few months to get a lot more in depth on that. So I don't want him to feel like he has to answer all the questions tonight, but wanted to start to at least give a primer on how the north end of the park could be impacted by some potential stormwater.
So that's fair, but this concept, I'm going to just be honest, gives me some pause. And I'm no stormwater engineer, obviously, but it sounds like what we're trying to do is take the stormwater and create an active creek here. But what I'm envisioning is some stagnant water, some muddy areas that a lot of kids are going to be having to traverse. I don't know how active of a creek we can create from the northwest corner down to the southeast corner, where it's not going to become this kind of a mess, this stagnant water mess with mosquitoes and whatever else goes with that.
Key to that is the comment that Tony's making about the depth of the system and making sure that this is a dry facility. It's not a wet pond that's sitting with stagnant water. So the goal is not to create a creek, and the goal is not to create a wet pond. The goal is to create a stormwater facility that you can cycle water through. That water can infiltrate and move in and out of the system with the pipe system that's there today.
But what I'm understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you're creating a path for the stormwater from the northwest to the southeast, which is fine.
Yes.
But again, unless that's an active creek that's continually flowing, and maybe I'm just misunderstanding, but what I'm seeing there is either a muddy area that kids are going to have to traverse, or just a soggy area that's not going to be pleasant for families. I don't know. Am I misunderstanding this, or?
It wouldn't have, it's not perennially flowing. It wouldn't have perennial flow, so it would convey the storm event, but is dry in non-storm event periods. There are different avenues we've provided to make sure people can traverse or cross that space, but it's happening today and causing problems. So part of what's happening is we're dedicating and giving the stormwater conveyance the space that it's already kind of taking from Lenan Park today, and saying, okay, well, instead of trying to cross that over with play fields that get soggy and muddy and mushy and have problems with them, let's make sure we get the play in spaces where it can stay dry and give the stormwater conveyance the space it needs in order to execute the functions and move through the site in the way that it wants to already.
Yeah, and one thing that I did state, I said a perennial feature being the discharge from the spray park. That would be the only continuous flowing water. And so, my imagination said that there could be an area that's dedicated to that, but not that it's really going to become a riverine system or a creek. In between storms, this area is going to be a prairie, not a wet pond.
But to Ted's point, I've got a couple questions. We could probably go too long, but to Ted's point is it's going to be wet from March to June. That's when we're wet. And July, August, we're going to be dry, and then we're going to be wet again. And then, oh, by the way, in June and July, the pool's going, so it's going to be wet. So, and I mean, that's how I envision it, right? So we're wet all the time. And then we're introducing stuff from the north that was never being introduced by these pink lines now coming in to purposely make these biodetention basins and creeks where we're piping water in where it was going up and around. We're now purposely putting the north. So are we trying to solve for the north? Because it seems to me when I'm out there every summer at this park, I'm seeing something different than what you all saw this summer or whenever you studied it. But are we, because it seems like Lenan has its solution for the water flow today. If we're trying to solve for the north, then let's just say we're solving for the north. Because it doesn't
We're
seem
solving there. You're pointing to a couple different things. The idea of this central feature is not solving a stormwater problem that you have at the field today. It's using it as an organizational feature of if we want to use stormwater in a way that we can see it, we kind of need to look at the topography of what's there and put it where it's going to flow naturally. It's because it gets hard to push dirt around and get it to where it doesn't want to go. So it's starting with that as a notion of this is where the water wants to go. This is where our low point is here. This is where our low point is there. So it's a natural course of drainage. So that's part one. But we are looking beyond the site itself, as you mentioned. We're not just solving for the site itself. We're solving for more water off, more stormwater and property in addition to that site.
up to Hickman.
Mm-hmm. So it's
The apartment complexes.
yeah. So it's
Not up to Hickman, not up that far. It's only going about the next block north.
yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah, not that far.
Yeah, the full watershed is Hickman, so we're going about a block.
And on that point too is, one thing that we talked about, because some of this in a rain event is happening on Lenan's ground anyway, in terms of where the overland flow is happening on the park. So it's recognizing some of that. And also one thing that we've talked about with this park is if we have opportunities in terms of thinking about it for a catalyst of redevelopment of what's around it, is how can we use the park and, for example, the underground chamber underneath a futsal court to then provide storage for when redevelopment hopefully occurs. In this case, to the north of the park someday, we now have a credit. The city's basically fronting the cost for some of that stormwater management that then would essentially charge the developer or bring that as an incentive for redevelopment to the table for a catalyst development, to happen, a redevelopment to happen to the north. So we've been trying to think about how can the park, again, facilitate redevelopment in the future while also hitting the primary needs of refreshing and upgrading all of the play features, the gathering spaces, the green spaces, the play features as much as we can at the same time. So we're trying to balance a number of things at the same time.
Is this solved for the Hickman and Alice and 86th Street corner lots drainage? So it's buildable, with this stormwater management model, because we own it. We need to deal with it.
Right.
And this needs to be an incentive, not a deterrent for who we're trying to bring into that property. And so it should be solved in this first phase to say, hey, it's ready to roll. Hey, let's somebody build because we've taken care of your storm water. We own it today. We should manage it.
So I'll,
Do you want me to take that one, Jay?
Yeah, go. I'll jump in real quick, Tony, then have you fill in the details. So from what I remember is that's the Festival Street is part of that concept because the drainage, that site doesn't flow that direction. It doesn't flow to the east. It actually flows to the west. And so I know one of the thought is the Festival Street could be done in pieces and having the storage underneath the Festival Street to provide that additional stormwater management because the site actually flows west towards 86th Street. Am I right on that, Tony?
Yeah, so looking at the exhibit that's up on the screen still, if you can look through the red to the blue line, that's the watershed divide. And so all of the Lanham Park that we've been talking about, the north-south programming, is essentially all part of the major watershed to the east. However, future development on 86 there is actually in a different watershed, and therefore the system that we're proposing is useful for mitigating water that's right now currently isn't treated for the eastern watershed, but a different mechanism would be necessary for incentive for the western developments. And so we imagine that going into the Festival Street.
But we need to solve for that today. We own the property. So why would we not solve for it today when we're solving we've mowed people in here. Let's not do another project in the future to solve for the property we already own and we should be taking care of.
To build on that, like I'm looking at the property lines from one of the previous slides, and that Festival Street goes through an area that the city doesn't own right now. And so that, I mean, how likely, I'm not saying it's not possible, but how likely is that to actually happen in this tiered phase project that we have going right now?
Our thought would be it would be in a later phase. Because I would say in phase one, which we'll show here in a minute in terms of what's in the phase one component that 2.5 million can get us is really that north half or north third. As far as that money will go. And so we know that this is going to be a tiered approach. So I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit.
That's okay. That's the next slide anyway.
Yeah. And so our thought is that we don't have a development today for the Alice and 86th Street corner. The Festival Street in concept could be done in components, phases as development allows. You don't have to do the whole Festival Street all in one shot. You could do the portion that's between this phase one north half and a redevelopment at 86th and Alice's Road first before it goes all the way through to Harbach. What I will say is, again, don't want to get too much into property. Those properties that are shown have been actively for sale for a while. So, but whether or not we want to make that decision, you don't have to make any of that tonight by any means. Sure. But that is something that we see in future phases, as well as Harbach Center. And that was kind of the idea behind this plan is what we're showing even here for the Harbach Center is completely flexible. There is not, I would say that there's active conversations that have started with potential partnerships with the school district maybe and others that we may not even need the Harbach Center in the future. That might be an option. So there might be something different there on that southwest corner. But the idea is kind of having these anchors on the northeast corner and the southwest corner, whatever that southwest corner looks like in the future, but that would be part of a future phase.
But to Mike's point, like that doesn't solve the issue today that we're seeing with that northwest corner property, right? And I, not to fixate on the Festival Street, but if the Festival Street goes through, even in the future, as we've, it's kind of been presented here, that's a lot of concrete that's going in on that south side, right? There's already kind of a roadway sort of there, that looks like an alleyway back there. And then now you're basically creating another alleyway or a larger alleyway just adjacent to it going all the way through.
That property on 86 and 86 and Alice will need parking.
And that's part of our
that
thought.
can be part of the, of what you're putting in the Festival Street, the first phase of that Festival Street, that then can be an incentive. But how do you account for that parking when this, this park, I've said it 100 times, this park is the highest used park in the city. I challenge anyone, minus the softball tournaments at Campbell, right, or the softball. And so if you drive by there on any Friday or Saturday, they're parked in the grass all around, all down Festival Street already. It's full. They've made their street. And so now you put an apartment or a multi-use building on 86 and Alice, you have no parking for them. The property is useless unless you're going to do waivers, because you can say go underground, but come on, that you've just added. Now it's not a feasible project.
What I would say to that is I think the Festival Street provides some opportunities on the west side for parking, but I think what's also an opportunity and a discussion that, again, very preliminary, has just started with the property owner to the east is, and we've talked about this before, is a shared parking opportunity on the east side as well to provide more parking spaces that could be coupled with the multifamily residential property to the east. And there is an interest, very preliminary, from that property owner of at least having conversations with the city of what that could look like. We're not showing that in any of these concepts today because that's very recent, but that's something that staff, we would like to explore further of what could happen on that east edge to provide even more parking. Because I would agree, we need to maximize parking opportunities if we're going to see redevelopment happen, because part of it is the depth of that site, the sites on 86th Street. We need to find a way to move some of that parking back to get more depth if we're going to try to have redevelopment of those sites along 86th Street. And, the idea behind the Festival Street is trying to move that back far enough to the east to the edge of the park to create some depth there. And so can we do, parking also on the east side at some point in the future that, again, can be shared parking? That's an asset that we need to create more of in this neighborhood if we're going to see redevelopment and to manage and to provide spaces for the park too.
Is that alleyway privately owned with those buildings right now, the one that's existing to the south?
It's their parking lot.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the parking lot for those two commercial buildings.
Okay.
Today. It did formerly have, if I recall, the buildings that the city had acquired to the north, it had a connection point through at that time, and then we demoed everything out. So it's kind of the same concept that was there, but again, moving it further east to give then more depth to those lots to the west, because there isn't a whole lot of depth there, hard to do to redevelopment with the depths of those current lots today that are fronting on 86th Street.
I'm not opposed to a little bit of a bend in that Festival Street, though, if that's that's what it
Well, and
takes.
part of it is thinking through how the Festival Street isn't a barrier either, and how you can flow between hopefully future redevelopment to the west. The Festival Street is ideally is to be designed in a way that is flexible, could have a festival component to it, doesn't always have to be used for parking. Can you put stormwater underneath it, in terms of managing that for both the parking itself and helping with the stormwater needs for the redevelopments to the west?
I think on that point, I mean, Mike had a good point, like that's a future phase, right? So that's not solving the stormwater issue
Today,
for
it's
that lot
not.
today. And
It's not.
So how do you bring in somebody to say, hey, develop here, we want you to develop here?
Well, and we're not saying that yet today.
Well,
What I would say is we're not ready to say that yet today. And so what this concept is showing right now is we're preserving it as green space for now until we're ready to say yes to that.
I'll just make one more comment. I mean, we've talked about catalysts developments, right? And I think that could be one, right? I don't know if we necessarily need to go across the street to the north to look for that. Why not look at the property that's literally next door?
What I would say is both and part of it is just the topography of where the drainage goes. So we would love for Lenan Park to have been able to do that for that west site, but the topography just falls the opposite direction. And so that's kind of what Tony was saying, is it actually sits in another watershed that flows the other direction. So that's where the Festival Street was the idea of, could that be where we would do some storage associated with the redevelopment sites to the west?
And I think a lot of the stormwater, the solutions aren't going to be either this or that. It's going to be and to facilitate the long-term redevelopment and enhancement of this entire neighborhood, not just the park, the north or the northwest parcel. It's going to be multiple solutions at multiple locations throughout this entire neighborhood that are going to get us to that. Part of the reason why we brought up the stuff to the north tonight is because it has impacts on how we would implement phase one. Certainly we would love, I mean, if we want to just do the whole park at one time, that'd be great. It's just way beyond what we've allocated in the budget for this. So in putting together what we're at least recommending with the $2.5 million that we have is this phasing of these elements based on what we heard from the students at Crestview, the money we have, and what we want to try to get done, and try to get as much done in a hump as possible so we're not disturbing areas with future phases. So I think there's flexibility in some of these things, or one of the things we talked about is this is what we're recommending for phase one, but we'd also wonder if there's ways, or maybe we should do some of the design for some of that stormwater stuff that could be considered as add alternates, or go through the next budget process that could come right on the heels of that. So I think there's some ways we can look at some of these different things here. We're trying to respond to getting the park improved, not wasting money by digging things up years in the future, and being ready for some of that redevelopment when it's time, or when we're ready to catalyze it.
What do we think the top 3 uses of this park are in your researches for the engineer or the design group that designed? Obviously, you studied it. What were the 3 top uses of this park?
What we were told was from the Takra, the game that people
Yeah,
play
Takra
is the number one. The people
I'm sorry, what?
The crowd
Takra.
where they bring out
Yep.
that badminton volleyball net out there.
With the feet, the buka
Right,
ball?
that they're coming on weekends, they're
Mm.
picnic, and they're using it as a
Mm.
bigger area. They're using the play and coming to the Harbach Center at the moment.
I'm gonna-
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. In the futsal.
I want to jump in real quick, because as I looked at this, I've been driving by this park for years, as Mike is. I can tell you the number one attraction is soccer.
Mhm.
That's where you get
Yeah,
hundreds of
the
people
futsal.
out there.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure where you're going to put a soccer field on the Great Lawn. Will that fit it? But that's where the bulk of the usage, that's
Oh.
where the demographics of the neighborhood is all focused around soccer. And Mike, you live closer than I do, but would you agree that there's an awful lot of soccer being going on here? I'm not seeing any place to play soccer.
Soccer and buka ball.
The
Mhm.
futsal, the
So-
futsal court.
The buka
So
ball is
we
huge.
put the futsal courts up here where they were more visible.
So they're moving those by the Harbach Center, the old
What the
tennis
heck is
court.
futsal? Sorry.
It's
I have no
soccer
idea.
on concrete with
Yeah,
walls.
It's just those little
That's
soccer
what we have out there
courts.
now.
That's the one that we have
What
right
they
in
call
there.
it?
Yeah.
With Team Iowa.
I never heard that.
Yeah, so we do have, we still have the 2 futsal courts, just moving them to a different location. That frees up some additional space for the basketball court, and the futsal courts are now to make that big, great lawn that's kind of be talked about
But
there.
where would you play buka ball? Where would you play?
To Crow, is that what you're
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah.
So you can see here, one of the things we had them do is kind of lay out the size of what those courts are here. Until this is redeveloped, they could hang out here. But then up here is just some unprogrammed grass space that fits both those in there. They could just put up their nets at any point and play within there.
Know where they're gonna put them.
Oh, they may put them right in the middle there, absolutely. And that's okay.
It's terrible. They're just mud pits.
Yeah, there absolutely are, and we've had conversations with them about staff would love to fix the turf, and they're like, no, we prefer it that way. And so,
We don't want a great lawn to look like a great mud wrestling pit, right? So.
I don't disagree.
would-
I disagree with you, but there's a certain battles we want to fight with the people and how they want to use the park. We'll do the best to create opportunities and spaces for them. And, we'd love to go out and make sure the turf looks perfect in all places at all times, but
They kind of.
yeah, I get it.
They do it now.
Yeah.
I don't know how you prevent that, though.
They do it,
Yeah.
but we're welcoming them to do it here. Anyway,
Well, I think that'd be hope is like, hey, this is an area that's unprogrammed for anything. This would be a great spot if you guys want to do that here. We can certainly, work with the community and the people that use the park to say, here were some great spots for that, or we'd recommend that. At the end of the day, I don't know how much we can police some of those use if they want to be in the middle there.
I can
Never
tell you, Richard.
please everybody all the time. I mean, understand that.
Yeah.
We're all trying to find a solution
Mhm.
that's functional and
Absolutely.
pleases the majority of people. I think we can all agree on that.
Well, and one of the things that we can look at in the overall design, because this is a concept design, right? This isn't a construction.
No, we
drawing.
get it.
Is we look at creating more opportunities within the layout that creates more flexibility for that, right? That's why we're here, is to gather those comments and to hear, maybe we really need a little bit more green space for this. So maybe we got to look at, can we slide something over a little bit so we can make that more functional and give them more options?
Well, the question I have is about ancillary use. I mean, we talk about all the soccer and such, but I guess I seem to see a lot of those folks staying for a longer period, taking advantage of the shelter, having events there.
drop cords and potlucks.
Yeah. Okay. So how's that accommodated in this plan?
So a couple of different things here. So Jay mentioned it kind of when we were going overview here. So this is where the proposed splash pad is going to be. This is the playground area here, but then as part of that, we want to have a new restroom building. So that would be kind of at the corner of this backwards L shape here. And then on each side of it would be shade areas for people to gather, have picnics, or there you go. It kind of shows that a little bit better there. So that it replaces some of that covered space that we have now and actually creates a little bit more covered space.
So these are covered. In addition, we also added more plaza space that's flexible adjacent to the Harbach Center. So again, looking at how you could use a couple different spaces in a couple different ways. So this can flex for people using futsal, using basketball. There's kind of two different shade structures that work for them, or there could be tables under there when they're not using that, their kids are at the splash park. Play over here, which has a direct connection across. That idea of an additional plaza or flexible space over here too. So you could have a couple different groups that don't necessarily want to be right next to each other. They have some options that are there for them as well.
And Tom, I'll just add to help answer one of the questions there. This is a good image to look at. If you were to imagine a center line through the Great Lawn space there, just to help you get a sense of scale, you can fit almost 3 full-size U8 soccer pitches perpendicular to that center line through that space. So if you can imagine taking those futsal courts and spinning them almost 90 degrees, or not quite 90 degrees, you can see how they would fit across there. They're pretty close in size to a U8 scale soccer pitch, just to help people get it. You could have almost 3 soccer and I know they're not setting up U8 regulation games out there, but you could basically have 3 games going sideways on that Great Lawn, just to give folks a sense of that scale.
Purpose of moving the futsal courts. I mean, you've got them right now. That seems to be an added expense when we couldn't build around that right now. What's the purpose of moving it up to that corner?
So a big part of that was that ultimately we're going to have to replace that. And so we asked ourselves, as kind of that part of that design process, when we have to replace that, would that be the spot we put it, or would we think about putting it somewhere else if we're re-envisioning the entire park? And so that's what we were thinking, is if we re-envision the entire park, we'd probably move them to the area that they proposed up there. And that's also why in the kind of proposed phasing, the initial phasing of that is that they wouldn't be moved. That would give us potentially more time, get some more key elements done with our first phase of construction, and then a later phase, then we could move those as part of that and get a few more years out of the space we're at now. And part of it is they just kind of sit in the middle of the park, and so that just created some kind of more difficulties creating a more cohesive kind of layout for the park and how we'd want to see it and how we wanted the activity to be oriented.
Part of our thought is and this is something that I'm interested in in terms of further involving the stormwater piece of it, is because of the expense of the underground chambers, it's hard to move the futsal court up there if you know you're gonna do some kind of underground underneath it as well. Obviously, you don't want to move the courts and then decide to put the chambers underneath it and tear everything up. So one thing that I would like to explore, again, I'm getting the sense that we've got some more work to do, obviously, with this from some of the council's comments. So I'd welcome that direction on where you'd like to see changes or things go. But one thing that we've been thinking about too is finding, looking at our CIP and our budget to find maybe ways that we can do and grants to potentially do the stormwater chamber right away with the phase 1 improvements and move the futsal and basketball courts up there as part of phase 1 right away, to then open up more green space to be able to tear out the concrete where they're at today, which we know the concrete under the futsal court is going to need to be addressed at some point. We basically just threw that on top of the existing tennis courts and tried to resurface the top layer. So can we add, find some ways to add more budget, particularly related to stormwater, knowing that we're making an investment for the future for stormwater detention. We don't want to have to re-tear it up. We can move the futsal, basketball courts up there, open up more green space, almost begin to start to form the Great Lawn now. Of course, it's not going to be as finished and trails around it as the final version. And then that becomes part of, phase 2 is that center part. And also it buys us time, because I think what we're finding with the Harbach Center, I think in some discussions, and I know we still have more visioning to do related to the Harbach Center, is we've got, again, life in that building, that before the mechanicals, we have major decisions to make on the mechanicals. I think there's going to be other opportunities for us for the Harbach Center, or the uses in the Harbach Center and potentially other places, potentially partnership with the school district and others. But we have time to get value out of that building. So we don't want to necessarily jump to the south third right now while we're trying to get value out of that building. So how can we basically work our way north to south and seeing this full concept in a form all done within the next 5 years? But could we even get some of phase 2 started if we can, again, do some work and maybe find some more budget beyond this $2.5 million to get some of the stormwater pieces started, so we fully get basically almost the north half done in phase 1? Is something that I would like to look at. But again, if there's some elements that we need to work on and change here that isn't meeting the council's expectations, that's what the discussion is about tonight. So.
I guess the question I would have on the Great Lawn, if what I'm hearing is that the neighborhood is playing soccer on the grass or some other game, are not those fields typically rectangular? I mean, and it seems to me if we're setting a space that we know they're going to be playing those type of games on, perhaps they should be oriented to make that easier for them rather than more difficult.
Well, one of the things we do with the idea of the oval is that those spaces fit in between, and there's also ancillary space on the edges of them where you can put your stuff, where the family can sit, you can throw down blankets, those kinds of spaces. So we use those extra spaces too. It's not just the square where you play, it's the square plus the spaces off of that. It's actually one of the things we did on the north side while we were laying out the basketball courts and the futsal courts, to make sure there was not just space for the court, but there's space for people to watch and people to hang out on the side. So those are really important. Those little spots in the park are really important spots from a social aspect.
Well, so on that point though, I think you shared like the Tacraw field, it could fit in that kind of flex lawn space, but it looks like it would, if it fits, it barely fits.
It's tight, yeah.
Right. And so, then you go back to that same problem. Like there's no room for equipment, there's no room for spectators, no room for family.
Well, some of that's built in on the edge, there's the overflow for the futsal too.
But then it
point's taken,
becomes
it's tight there.
Yeah, but then it becomes
Between the lawn and Alice, like that's there now, the big baseball back fence, because the ball will just go to Alice every time that we're welcoming the kids to go out there.
But to that end though, if it's that tight and I'm going to play and I've got a bunch of, equipment with me or family members or whatever, I'm going to say, oh, that's not big enough. So let me go down to the Great Lawn area, right? Like that's much more open, much more inviting. That's just, my train of thought if I'm looking to find a space.
People will fill the space that's there that they feel fits best for them at the time, right?
Right, so if the plan is to try to keep that great lawn kind of more lawn-like, maybe we do need to make an adjustment there to accommodate that more, or for what it's being used for, right?
Totally. Yeah, so I think that's a carve out a little bit bigger spaces, creates more flexibility in those other spaces.
You still have a baseball to accommodate, which the school got rid of their baseball field, which was really visionary. Since there is no baseball field in the neighborhood, why not get rid of the one that is in the neighborhood? Just did that last summer. So you still have a baseball, which I think we have an individual in Clive that likes to use the baseball field here every time, which is another subject, but that's gone. So there will be no baseball in the neighborhood anymore, or that developmental league or whatever it is, camp, because
Opportunity on deck.
because the school chose to get rid of their only baseball field. Did I mention that?
One thing I'd say on that, I mean, it still provides opportunities to put in a backstop, somewhere along the Great Lawn if we want to. I will say this, in all the work that we did, baseball was not even in the top 20 of things that people mentioned that they wanted to do out there. So, but it's absolutely something we can accommodate with a backstop like this out there now.
The baseball comment.
Yeah.
That's why we got rid of the baseball field at Linan when we had that discussion, was because it wasn't being
Mhm.
used.
Yeah, we filled it in with grass.
Yeah.
Seeded it, and then Crow used, they played in that space.
The top three that the students, this has been some time ago, it's worth of revisiting. The top three uses the students identified were playground type equipment, splash pad, and some skate features.
Right, and that's your sixth grade down. And then you use your 20-something up, it's all the other features we just mentioned.
Right.
That is the highest use of the other two things. I think maybe some more photos and live video of how that park's being used would be helpful. If we have any stock photos of summer days, summer nights there.
Yeah, and for the design team's benefit, they were taking what staff was telling them, what we see in terms of usage at the park. So we did have a planning charrette out there on site, but for the most part, in terms of them getting an understanding of what's the experience out there, it was from staff that are maintaining the park, that are out there, and what we're seeing, similar to what, those that are in the neighborhood are seeing in terms of the usage.
One other primary usage we saw, especially when public safety was still over at the building, was people who were able to use the public Wi-Fi. That was another reason why a lot of people were congregating there in the park.
And that is something, I'm glad you brought that up, Pete. We didn't really mention much in Greenbelt Landing. But one thing that we do want to look at for Greenbelt Landing, potentially working with a partner as a sponsor, is providing public Wi-Fi in our major park spaces, with Greenbelt Landing being the first one. I think this one being right alongside that. Maybe Campbell Park at some point in the future. Maybe you're working with a MediaCom and MetroNet as a sponsor. But we're trying to think through in the construction drawings, at least for Greenbelt Landing, of putting the conduit in, the wiring in. We'll have some light posts, like for example, in Greenbelt Landing, where we could put Wi-Fi connections. We're thinking the same thing for this park as well, because of that usage that we saw when the public safety. And we still have that Wi-Fi that goes out a little bit, because the Hardbox Center still has that public Wi-Fi in there and that usage. So. But I guess the biggest thing that we're looking for is go to the phase one screen, is really the phase one components. Obviously splash pad was loud and clear.
Playground.
Need to bring a water feature back. We need to have the covered spaces, revised restroom. That little cluster right there is probably eating half, if not 2/3 of the budget right there.
Most of it
is just putting that piece into place. Because of the pump, I'm just trying to give you scale.
Yeah.
And then,
Because of the vault.
No,
because of the splash pad.
Splash in the building.
Resources to get there.
Vault in there?
what is highlighted here are the darker areas here. So part of the playground, the splash pad, the restroom, and the two covered shade areas and associated kind of amenities with that is what we can afford with the $2.5 million budget. The stormwater stuff would be on top of that, the vault, that type of stuff. So this is based on the design work and the probable cost opinion that they put together, this is what we can afford at that phase one. And right now, that's kind of how we're recommending that be spent. Now, like Matt talked about, there's other stuff we'd love to be able to work on. But
Yeah, just kind of
Would
off on
that,
its own.
that would include that play equipment as well?
It includes part of the play equipment.
yeah, so about third to half of it. So then the rest of it come in a phase two,
Why break that up?
just the amount of money we have.
And if I remember right too, that doesn't necessarily mean removing the play equipment that's there now. So there could still be the use, some good use that
We
comes out
would
of
keep
what's there
some of
now.
them, yeah,
Sure.
for now. And the reality that we're finding with, as we look at the costs, particularly for the, that core feature, is one thing we need to figure out in our capital improvements planning is adding more funding to finish out this park in the near term. And that means moving other priorities back, because we know this is a top priority for the council. So in terms, especially if we're able to maybe get the stormwater and the futsal and the basketball court in this phase one, prioritizing phase two, which is the great lawn in the middle, and then giving us some time on the Harbach Center decision on the south end. $2.5 million was not going to be enough to redevelop this entire park. That's what we're finding out. So we know we need to do more. We're not done by any means.
I'm disappointed in myself for saying this, but I'm probably not opposed to this, this phasing. I need to think about it longer, but I would probably vote personally to hold off and get the money and do this right like we do every other park, except this one for the last 13 years. And do this thing right once. Because taking out a baby pool to appease, to putting in a soccer pitch to appease, to doing that is not fair to this side of our community. And I'll leave it at that.
Do we have a re-estimate of what the total cost would look like based off of this vision?
The full build out, I don't know if we have.
We don't have that right now, but we could certainly work on that and get that information to the council. Part of it depends on ultimately what happens with the Harbach Center and the stuff to the south. So we could probably work with them to get a pretty good handle on what would everything be except for how we'd handle that. Because obviously,
I think you'd be okay with that, right?
Yeah, that's a
See the
big.
park and as one phase and
Sure.
Harbach Center is.
yeah, and whatever happens there, because like Matt's talked about, there's probably 5 different options we look at there. There's leaving the existing building and remodeling it. There is tearing down the main building, leaving the rec bay and doing an addition on the west side of it. There may be
Doing an addition on it and just leaving the rec bay as.
as a rental facility,
There.
scraping it clean, and it's more open space for some of those uses that we've talked about. They're popular out there. Or scraping it clean and maybe doing some housing redevelopment at that southwest corner. So there's about 5 different options we could look at there with the Harbach Center. So it's, maybe you're right, like we do all except for the Harbach Center in one phase, then it gives us time to figure out what happens with the Harbach Center, the redevelopment, the school. And then that's the last phase, once we get that about 3 to 5 years out, hopefully.
Well, and let's not forget the Festival Street too.
Well, that we,
Down the road.
including that part of that as
Right.
part of like what would be phase 2 or phase 3. So we could, that gets incorporated into that, as well as some of these connections and how do we connect these areas east and west and north and south of this.
And one of the tricks for that, filling it out as much as we can is kind of what happens in that southeast corner with that low spot. Because we're not necessarily taking off the Harbach Center building where we know that low spot is, but what we might look at is, do we just go ahead and take out that lower parking lot?
Yeah.
Again, it pains me to take away parking. I know that parking isn't used all that much, but that is something that we would want to look at in terms of, if we're trying to create, that drainage spot where it wants the water, where it wants to go in that southeast corner that floods the parking lot anyway. Again, only in major rain events is one thing I want to make sure you understand, you hear. That's when we've had that water down there. But we can definitely look at that, kind of go up to the edge of what we can do with Harbach still sitting there. But not taking away of whatever the decisions may happen with Harbach itself. We can definitely come back with that and outline. My hope is also, as we can further evolve some other conversations on with some of the edge property owners as well, in terms of shared parking and potentially other redevelopment opportunities, that maybe we can also bring to the table before we, if the desire of the council is let's try to do it as much as we can in one shot, one phase. That could also be a piece of it too, on that east edge in particular.
Yeah, that's kind of pointing back to the 86th Street neighborhood plan and what we've discussed in the past about having to grind for a long time in the space to get to leave open the possibility of that future redevelopment from the private sector. It's sort of the cost that comes with that is a certain tolerance for incrementalism, because these things don't happen all at the exact same time on this schedule that we would love to have.
Concept, the 86th Street concept, all the way back to the beginning. That's the second slide, third slide. Yep. But for example, this was 86th Street plan showed that shared parking on that east edge, a concept of it. So the one thing I wanted to be sensitive to is I know there was a desire in the council. We wanted to see something happen in this park in the short term. And so
We wanted the park developed. In the past, we've wanted to see something. So look, I probably should just be quiet, but again, it was appeasement after appeasement after appeasement. Take the baseball court out. Okay. That appeased us for a year because we wanted to see something. Take the baby pool out. That appeased us for a year because we wanted to see something. Give us one more year and we'll do the pitches. And then we'll do the whole thing. I get it. Look, I got a lot of frustration. The business owner to the east needs to put some money up. I mean, this is a huge amenity that he's taken everything out of. It's disgusting to me, quite frankly. That he continues to pull his playgrounds out, his pools out, everything else out. And here we're building something for the neighborhood, and we're going to wait 2 to 3 years, mark my words, to make this deal for this eastern parking lot, right? And that'd be a quick timeline. In the meantime, look, good enough is good enough. And so to start putting in little things to appease, when I look at phase one, sorry about the soapbox, but I see phase one, I don't see anything different than today's park, other than a splash pad. Because we already have a shelter that's highly used. I mean, there's potlucks, there's electrical cords running from the rafters, literally, folks, come on out and see it. There's hundreds of people there. And so if you look at that picture again, there's a splash pad for $2.5 million. So what, right? I mean, the rest is green space. There's not even a water or whatever they're called, vaults in that 2.5 million in that picture. There's not even extra stormwater detention pieces. It's a pretty green thing that's not practical. That's my opinion.
So what direction does the council have for what we want to see coming back?
You know, from my opinion, I think we still have some more discussion on this. I need to go out and walk this park again and really take a look and visualize with these slides. I'm not really to say at this point, Richard, hey, this is great concept moving forward. This is a big investment. There's a lot of different thoughts here. You know, I think we got some work to do. Do we want to do all at once, incremental? I think there's still a lot of open questions. Do we want to do more with this? Do we want to hold off until we've got a larger chunk of money to do more with this? Do we want to take that incremental plan that's been proposed? There's still a lot of questions for me.
Yeah, I understand Mike's frustration. I mean, is there something new that you wanted to see that's not here?
Well, I can tell you if we go back in the audios of the past, this was going to get built, right? And there were all kinds of negotiations done. Move the police station, you know, get the fire station. We'll get this next, or put the 2.5 million aside and we'll get the park next. And I just think it's unfortunate how many years has this been put off? Literally 13 years since I've been on here, right? The quickest way to get me off this council is to get this thing done.
You have your mission.
Perhaps then I'm done. But for the 13 years I've been on, I've pushed this, and we're going to put a splash pad in. That's it. I mean, really, that is all that.
I would push back just a little bit on that. You're talking about the investment and it hasn't been down out here. So you're right. We could just put a splash pad, spend $500,000, call it a day. But what we're hearing from the council is that's not the type of investment we want to do out here. We want this to be something the neighborhood would be proud of. And if we just throw a splash pad out there and don't rebuild anything else, that's not what we're hearing from the council. So the $2.5 million represents an entire reimagining and start to that, from at least what we've shown tonight. But certainly whatever, do we want to reimagine it and put more of it together and reprioritize some of the existing projects? We're happy to.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think it's a little unfair to say all we're doing is a splash pad for
Put up-
2.5
put
million.
up-
It's a
Put
redesign.
up phase one again.
I think what
I'm skeptical of the whole stormwater plan. I'm gonna be,
Just the phase one
Honest,
picture of what
I'm
they're
not a big
doing.
fan of
phase
that.
there. That green space here exists. This green space exists. This shelter exists.
Well, what I'm hearing from the council is if you could look at the whole project and come back with at least some kind of ballpark notion of what beyond 2.5 is needed, so that we have some idea for planning purposes. That'd be a fair,
minus the Hardbox Center. Yep.
yeah, up to the Hardbuck Center as you described.
Yeah.
I think that'd be helpful to the process.
Okay.
And Councilman Weaver, building on your point, would you all like to seek alternate concepts for stormwater as well?
I would. I'm skeptical. And again, I'm not a water engineer. I don't understand all the science behind it, but I'm very skeptical of that plan. I would like to see an option.
Okay, a couple of things. What else? Anything else?
Maybe if I could just get some clarification from Councilmember Weaver, are you saying aesthetically that's the concern from the concept? I just want it so we can respond better to that. Are you saying just you're concerned about the aesthetics of how it would look? What you're saying earlier with the muddiness?
It's not just the aesthetics, but the function, with
Okay.
how the park will work with kids going back and forth in this area. I know we're saying that the rainfall, it kind of goes that way now during rain events. Well, there aren't kids out playing soccer during rain events, right? And so what now, in my mind, what we're creating is kind of a constant, stagnant, whether it's stagnant water or, an area that you're not wanting kids to traverse. Well, they're going to because they're kids.
Yeah.
And I just don't see it as being very functional personally.
No,
Give them a
that's
path to
helpful.
Take the two other.
That's right, exactly. So.
Can I ask for clarification on
Sure.
that? We will look at stormwater. With part of the stormwater, I think one of the other things we could do is we could provide more information on, we've got a pretty high level plan here to say this is what it is. We could also supplement that with, here's how we think this works, and demonstrate that a little bit better too. I think, some of the stuff you're saying is, hey, how does this work? And I don't have a picture I can say, it's this.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's probably my ignorance on how this stuff works.
Yeah.
And I fully admit that, but just in my own head, the way I envision this looking and working, I don't think it's going to work well with kids.
No, absolutely.
To add to that, if we're still phasing the fall, which I know that's up in question now, right? We're kind of rethinking that, but if we're still planning on rephasing that stormwater vault, right? What does that do in the near term to that detention area and the run? There's going to be more runoff, right? There's going to be more likelihood of standing water.
We're going to handle, no matter what we do in the park, we're going to have to handle that stormwater per our ordinance. So, that'll be all part of the equation. So we're going to have to kind of take the comments and the clarifications that the council wants and come back with some revisions and some more information and some updated proposals.
And to the Great Lawn, I was hearing that perhaps we need more refinement so that some actual games pitches, whatever.
Yeah, and maybe one of the things we can do is on those drawings is kind of, maybe we can hash out some, like how big a soccer field would be on that and some of those things.
It's just making more of a decision around that Great Lawn. Do we want to allow that, or not allow, but do we want to encourage that use there, or do we want to make a more dedicated space somewhere else? Like
absolutely.
up in the top.
Perfect.
And we can demonstrate how that lays out, how that fits in the overall context.
Perfect.
And perhaps it's easy as like at Campbell, where you put up a volleyball court. They know to go to the volleyball court, right? And you don't have volleyball courts all over Campball. So maybe we put a regular, I call it buka ball, but courts up that say, come here. It's up all night, it's all day through the summer.
Path of least resistance, right?
Councilman McCoy, were you in the rest of the council as well? There was a question about sort of the research we've done on uses in the space? Are you all satisfied with sort of the assessment that we've done, or do you need us to get more direction there?
I
I
think
think
we
you
know
get-
how it's used.
I think you've got a good assessment from sixth graders at Crestview.
Mhm.
I don't know, whenever I see people out playing soccer. I mean, that's the main activity I see. It used to be.
Absolutely.
And hookah ball is huge. I mean, it's huge.
It is. It's very popular.
They got 3 courts every night
Mhm.
and they're muddy,
Mhm.
which is fine. That's.
Yeah, it's weird because we've offered them to have nicer turf for them. They're like, no, we prefer it this way. So yeah, it's a little bit odd because we tend, as parks people, we tend to want to have the grass look good and have it be nice, and they,
You give them new, better, that means seeding it or whatever, which means they close, in their head, you're closing them off from their area that they, if you look, they're on the same
they are in the same spot
every time.
along
And so
towards the
now
eastern
you're
part.
telling them they gotta move, and now
Mhm.
they're gonna tear up that lawn. And
Yeah.
now you're gonna move, and they're gonna tear up that lawn.
It's
and
almost
they-
like created the dedicated
Yeah.
dirt
Yeah.
turf that
Yeah.
they prefer.
Absolutely.
And where does basketball land on the priority lit, no, I mean,
Oh.
like the popularity of the,
It's very popular. It's one of the ones you almost always see people out playing basketball at night, especially when the weather's nice, obviously, but
The lights are a big deal.
Mhm.
Timers, and I think at 10 o'clock or something. or
Futsal
maybe
courts.
yeah, we shut off, I think it's 10 or 10:30 based on ordinance. We shut the lights off,
You've
so,
got your 3-on-3 or something all night.
right.
yeah.
What else? Have we covered it? Do we want to talk more?
We can keep going.
We got some work to do.
All right, I think that.
Can I make a
concludes-
clarifying question?
Yeah.
With a slight explanation, as it relates to the stormwater piece. There's 2 different systems here. One is the system that's necessary by ordinance for the development of the park. And so that's going to be the sinuous stormwater path that's going through the site. The underground vault is an opportunity to do flood management work within the limits of the park. And I'm not sure that everybody has fully grasped that idea. We're not trying to fix what's going on to the north or provide incentive for development to the north. There's flooding issues within this watershed system. And what we were asked to do, and what the staff sees as a valuable exercise, is to see how much flood mitigation can we do within the property of the city to better the whole watershed system. So it's going to have a benefit to the entire downstream system of this network. And so I just wanted to clarify that and make sure that if people weren't of that understanding, if they understand that they're really 2 separate systems. One is required stormwater management, and the other is potential for flood mitigation strategies, because we don't, by code or ordinance, need to accept any offsite water. This is simply, the city owns the property, the city has flooding issues, the city should use their property to deal with flooding issues.
I think we've grasped that, and I think we understand that based upon the credits and some other things that we've discussed, so we understand the difference.
Thank you.
Anything else?
We got work to do and we'll be back at some point.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Now, we've been at this a while. Do we need to take a break, or how long, Stephanie, you got a half hour, 45-minute presentation, or?
No, we got about 5-10 minutes, and then questions.
Plow through, okay.
My report.
Benefit of the library board members who
Yep.
You want to hear all about dark,
have been sitting.
great detail.
Can't wait.
All right, ready? All right, we'll change subjects just a little bit here. From parks, we'll go to libraries. So before I get started, I do want to thank their multiple library board members here. Ask them to come out and kind of so you get a name and a face. I believe in the audience, Joanna Gilmore is here. She's our newest library board member and is very excited to be part of the library. And we'd love to have her the first couple months. And I believe there's probably a few of them online as well. We're able to be here in person. But wanted to join and kind of be part of the discussion of this as well. And then finally, we have Stephanie Keller, the library manager, and Terry Nelson, one of our full-time librarians here as well. So don't often, unless you just come into the library, see them and kind of hide behind making sure it looks good and works well. So wanted to have them come out and kind of be part of this. So Our intent tonight was a check back in with the council on the fine-free library pilot program that the council approved back starting in July 1st of 2022. So one of the things you asked us to do was come back after 18 months and say, how has it gone? What have we learned? What happens next? So there was kind of the way we structured this pilot program was that we would be eliminating fines on traditional items. That's books and magazines. Fines would still be charged on a lot of other non-traditional things. So like our video and board games, our makerspace library of things that you can check out, those would still be subject to fines once you're overdue. Also, we would still collect fees. So fees are things that we would collect. If you lost an item, you got to pay for the book. Those type of things, those were still assessed. It was just those traditional items we would no longer charge the daily fines for. Also, one of the things that we as staff really want to see, what did we expect or what did we think we'd see if we did this fine free? So the hope was that we would see an increase in counts of activated and new library card signups. We did have quite a few library accounts before this happened that could no longer check out materials because they had fines that they hadn't come in and paid. So their account was deactivated. We expected obviously a decrease in revenue because you're no longer going to take in fines as part of that. We expected it to be about $15,000 per year. We did expect an increase in circulations. We expected a decrease in patrons billed. We expected a marginal increase in times to fill holds because potentially people weren't bringing the materials back right away. It would take a little bit longer. And then one thing we expected and came to fruition is a lot of confusion between fines and fees. Because I think up to this point, people just everything assumed it was a fine as part of that, but there was a very big distinction in that. So what happened after we went fine free? Many patrons were very appreciative the library is now fine free. There was definitely a period of confusion about fines versus fee. And then what would continue to accrue a fine, so the video games, and why there was a differentiation between those. And then people who could no longer check out books, do those fines, could now check them out again. We asked the first 6 months, if you bring back the materials you have, we'll reactivate your account and let the fines go. We saw some of that. We didn't see as much as we would have expected for people to bring back materials. We think they just probably lost it at that point and walked away from the, they had material costs plus their fines. And so they just accepted the cost of business of not coming back again. Also, you had asked us to put together some metrics on how we would chart the success of this and come back and have this discussion here. So these were the 6 areas that we had kind of talked about. And then what we have kind of summarized here is what it looked like in the 18 months before fine free and the 18 months since fine free. So in the 18 months before on library card signups, we had 61 prior to that. In that 18 months, we've had 104 new library card signups since that time. Another one was we wanted to see how many more people were coming through the doors of the library. Would that create an increase? So in the 18 months prior to that, we averaged 4,300 people coming through the doors. And I will make just a slight caveat on that. We had to shorten that period because we were closed for the pandemic for part of that period. So if you had averaged out the months were closed and the months we were open, it was like 2,300, wasn't really a fair comparison. So that one reflects 6 months before fine free. And then the fine free after that is 4,600. So we have seen an increase of people coming through the doors. Same with monthly circulations. We are seeing about 11,300 items circulate each month. That we've seen a good jump on that up to about 14,000 circulations per month. This one, patrons billed for lost items. We are seeing more people get billed for lost items. So what we think are happening is, since they're not fines, we shut off their access to the library after 7 days until they bring the material back. We think then they probably just keep it and then get billed for it. So that's why we think there's probably a little bit of an uptick on that. Average days to fill a hold, we could get you an average here. And honestly, before and after fine free, it's pretty close, around 14 days to fill a hold. The reason I put like the averages because it can vary quite a bit between month to month to month. There's months where we have a really popular item. So Prince Harry's book was very, very popular. A ton of people wanted it. We bought extra copies, but we're not going to buy 30 copies of it to fill a demand over a short period. So months like that, we're going to have 18 days to fill a hold. When there's not big things like that, it's a much less time period. So still within that same period, but a little less variability since fine free.
So on that part on the holds,
Yeah.
is there a change in the numbers at all? Like are you know, because let's say, for example, these books are staying out longer in circulation. Is that what's contributing to the hold time?
So it's how many people want to read the books. So in a case like that, we'll have high demand for people wanting to read that book because it's one of the biggest bestsellers. And we'll buy extra copies of that, but we're not going to buy enough copies financially make sense to fill that very quickly. So for that initial month or 2 or 3, we'll have a little bit higher holds on that. And then when it's less busy and then the demand catches up with the amount of books we have, then
Yeah.
you can start to see that come down.
And so, yeah, and that's what I'm kind of asking is, are we seeing that the holds numbers are just kind of, you know, they're congregating around those popular release times, whereas before maybe they were a little more spread out?
No, I think we're seeing it's staying pretty steady before and after fine free. So we're not seeing, I think there's a little bit of a worry that without the fines that people would hold these books longer and then it would increase those. And I think what we're saying is we didn't see that big increase that we expected.
Okay.
But there were some very popular books in the last 18 months that did create some higher demand some months. And then the last one we looked at was fines and fees revenue. So what we did pre-fine free, we averaged about $15,600 or almost $16,000 per year for each of the 5 years prior to that in fines and fee revenue. In fiscal year 23, we had about 7,600. And so far in fiscal year 24, we've seen about 5,600. So much less dip in the amount of revenue than we expected. We expected probably more dip in the revenue on that. Some of that is we're expanding some of those items that do have daily fines if you're late. So like the board game collection is something that we're growing and getting more people do. The video game collection is something that we're growing, as well as the makerspace. And those are all subject to fines still at this point.
If I'm thinking about this correctly, so we're for FY24, we'll be above that 7,600 number.
Most likely,
most
yeah.
likely.
Yeah. This was just, so basically it's 7 months of the year. So it's basically to when we turn this in here on Monday.
Okay.
So Richard, I appreciate these metrics. A couple of metrics that I was curious about, and you may not know off the top of your head,
Yeah.
that's fine, but have we quantified the number of lost materials that have not been returned since we went this way? Not just the patrons that we billed for,
Yeah.
but have the amount of materials not been returned increased at all?
Is that a metric we can get? I think it is.
I think it is, but I have to double check.
We'll do a little bit of research on that.
We'll follow up.
Yeah, and we'll see if we can get that.
Metric to
Yeah.
understand, I think. And then the other one is for those who are late, are we seeing an increase in their recurrence of that delinquency because there are no fines?
So the one thing, the way we kind of worked on that in the policies, we'll have to check and see if we can pull that. I don't know if we can pull, like, you've had your account shut off 6 times in the last 6 months. The way we try to combat that with the library board in some of the policy changes we did is that when your items are 7 days late, it shuts off your privileges until you return those materials. So that's how we tried to kind of combat the hope that you would get with the fines is your access is done until you bring it back. That's the way we kind of try to combat that, but we'll see if we can do that and get that information.
We should be able to track how many times,
Yeah.
like we've shut off
Just curious,
somebody's
we're getting a
account.
bunch of repeat offenders
Right.
because there's just no fines.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming there's communications that go with that, right? Like you're
Yeah,
not able
absolutely.
to rent. Or,
Yeah, Stephanie's got
check out books.
a great communication system for people when that happens and what they need to do to get shut off. And then we've revamped our letters that go out to people that are going to collect, or they've lost the material after 60 days and they need to pay for it. Or if they bring it back in, we just pay the $5 fee and then they can have their account back. So they don't have to pay for the book. So we try to do our best to get people back and using the services. It's taken a little bit of adjustment, I think, for people. And I think people are just still learning, how does this work? And I think we're going to probably find there are probably some repeat vendors that struggle to get their books back and lose their privileges until they bring it back, and probably happens several times.
Other questions? So thank you, Richard, and thanks to the staff and to the board. We apologize that this was a 3-hour meeting for those of you online and present here, but we really appreciate everything that you've done.
Yeah, I just a couple last things on this. Couple random things we noticed here, what we saw on where some of those things were happening. So I won't read these. Give you a second, and then
I think on one of these slides, there's something about teachers were appreciative of this as well, right?
yeah, yep, the last bullet there.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm. And then just a quick recap, what are some of the other libraries in the metro doing? So we've seen since we started this pilot program, we've seen some additional ones go fine free. Probably the biggest is that Des Moines Public went fine free on most items starting at the beginning of this year. Previously, they were just fine free on kids items, but they went a larger fine free after that. And you can see the rest of them in here. The other ones on here, Stephanie's reached out to them. No intentions of going fine free at this time beyond what's already done that. And then kind of what next, I think we feel like we're seeing a lot of success with this, that it's not impacting a lot of the things that we thought might happen. So we'd hope that maybe the council would be okay continuing this program. We want to look at automatic renewals for items that don't have a hold on them. So then people don't have to worry about coming in and renewing it if there's not a hold for it. So then they could have it for 2 automatic renewals after that. We want to just kind of look at the overall fines and fees for the items that still are charges that. That's something we'd work with the library board on. And then we want to look at additional ways for revenue enhancement for some of that lost revenue from the fines. Something that we're evaluating right now is in the past, we've had that book sale annually. It's a ton of work from volunteers and staff for 3 days, and we usually only get about $1,300 in revenue. Stephanie has done some great work that books that we're reading out of the library are good donated books. We actually think that we might be able to ship off to thrift books, and they'll give us 60% of the revenue that they sell the book for. So we think that's something that hopefully can reduce staff time and increase the amount of revenue that we're getting for these books that are no longer needed in the library. So if that works out, we'll be here later talking about that as our process improvement for 2024. So, but we need a little bit of time to figure out if that's something that really could make a difference in that as well. And then just one last thing, this is just a good quick update since we're not here talking about library very much. The library policies. So this is something that the policies govern how the library operates. Staff makes recommendations and proposes changes to those policies to the library board. They review those policies and approve changes to them. We're required to do that every couple of years. And then the last thing is, if someone is interested in challenging one of those policies or elements of those policies, ultimately that comes to you as the city council by the way that the library board is set up and the public libraries here. So just a good refresher for the council, because it doesn't happen or hasn't happened since I've been here, but just a reminder that that's how that kind of works, because we're a little bit different than most of the libraries in the state. And then just a quick list of all the library policies that we have that are each reviewed and updated every 2 years. And really, I know the mayor thanked them, but I want to thank the library board because they put in a lot of time to be very thoughtful about how those policies impact what people do and how they use the library, and how do they use the library in a way that is beneficial for everyone that wants to come in here and check out books or use the facilities that we have. And they do an amazing job with that. With that, happy to take any questions.
I'd like to just say thanks to the staff that's here and the board that's here. I meant my statements earlier. This is, to me, an insane amount of programs and people that come through this library. And y'all should be very proud of that for the size we are. And sometimes when I hear we should be bigger or we should build another library in the past or something, I'm like, I kind of like this library, right? It's kind of a small hometown type library, and it is used like a large city library when you come in here. And so that's kind of the cool environment that I see when I come in and come through this place. So I like it, and hats off to you for doing so much with such a little footprint.
Thank you. I know the staff enjoy it and they work real hard.
I'll agree with that. I would ask that, if we do make this more of a permanent policy, that maybe every other year come back with those metrics, or some type of metrics, just so that we can kind of keep monitoring it, including any lost materials that
Yeah.
were accumulating as a result. So
Mhm.
we can just kind of track that.
Maybe what we can do is put together an annual report that, we, from the previous year, and get about this time every year.
Anything else? If not, thanks again.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move into our reports. Pete.
Thank you, Your Honors. So there's a cluster of communications that are going to be going out to neighbors here over the next couple of weeks to be aware of, and Matt will be providing this update in his weekly emails this week and next week. The Little Walnut Creek Neighborhood Meeting is now confirmed for Tuesday, 13th at 6 o'clock at Schuler Elementary School. So it's a little under 2 weeks from where we are today.
So date on that again?
Tuesday, the 13th, 6 o'clock.
And I'll include that in my update tomorrow too, with the date.
A postcard invitation will be going out to a big area sort of around the Little Walnut Creek corridor, similar to what we invited from the Clive residents. We did this meeting a year ago. Tell them what we did last year, what we got on the docket for this coming year. Also introduce some of the things that we'll be doing over on the west side of Alice's Road, and mentioned to all of these folks, oh, by the way, we've got a massive street reconstruction coming right through your neighborhood too. So lots to talk about with that group. We'll also use the big email distribution list we've built. That includes folks from Waukee and Urbandale, who we've just made it a habit. If they were interested in the project, they use the trail. We want to continue to feel like they've got a stake in all this and can have a chance to be heard. Public Works Department, after getting the trucks out to get around all the snow, have discovered that there are quite a few places where we've got private property trees and some public right-of-way trees that are starting to get hit by the plows and potentially doing some damage to those big tall trucks. So we've got to get out in some strategic areas and trim back those limbs. Now, we're making sure that we right-size this approach. I've been talking with Jerry Freestone over at Public Works Department and working with Jeff as well. We don't have unlimited resources to get to every place where we might go do this, but Jerry's working now to identify those places that are the most problematic for us right now. So once we've got that, I'll give this group a sense of the scale, how many places we're going, how many types of trees we might be touching, an estimate. And then we hope in the month of February, assuming we don't have more snow events and other things that tie up the crews, that we're going to be able to get out and do this work. But it will certainly be the kind of thing that could spark some communications with our constituents and residents who are concerned about what this might mean. But it's important to do it because we need to make sure that, and the city's code allows us to do that for safety reasons and to protect the vehicles. Service lines, water service lines. We are dealing with just about 4,000 properties that we still need to get out and confirm, a little less than that. And we have until October to trim that number down as much as we can, confirm that we don't have bad stuff in those service lines for the water, lead being at the top of that list. We are pushing this in our newsletters frequently. You'll see that in the February newsletter. We'll also put it in the March newsletter. In between those, mid-month, we're also going to send postcards out to those folks mid-February and mid-March. Then after we see kind of the results we get there, we'll keep layering on more and more communication tools so that we can make that list as small as possible by the time we get to the fall. Building on some communications, some discussion earlier in this meeting, there were questions about how we're communicating to neighbors about big construction projects that are coming up on some of the arterials. We've been discussing that as a team, whether it's going to be detour information, construction timelines, all that stuff. That's going to be a major communications task all the way up to the construction season and through construction season. We've got a game plan for putting together some really good visuals to give neighbors a good sense for what they can expect to see, and hopefully also some confidence that not only are we going to be doing this, but we're going to get it done, weather permitting, on time, and get everything back to a better state of normal by the time we get through the construction season. Looking forward to have celebrating with many of you on Saturday night when we go to the Bravo Gala. For those of you who are coming, I've sent you some notes on what our table assignment is. You don't need to check in this year. You'll just be able to go straight to your table assignment. At least that's what it says on the materials that they've shared. But if at any point there's any kind of last second change or challenge, just drop me a note on my text or a call on my cell, and I'll do my best to help you out with the logistics.
Very good. Thank you. Shrikant.
So here we go. Yeah. I won't go into everything because I Matt, in the last week's update, sent kind of the overview, but just to hit the highlights, there is a new executive committee that was voted in. Russ is still going to be chairing. And then Connie is coming on as at large.
DART is what we're referring to.
Yeah,
for
sorry.
everybody.
Yeah,
DART is what we're talking
this
about.
this is all referencing.
I know you
DART.
pretty much all
Yeah.
know, but just thought I would say that for the
Cloud
recording.
historical.
It's DART.
Oh, if only, right? So one of the things that is obviously up for, contention right now is the franchise fee with the city of Des Moines. Des Moines is reticent to put the franchise fee forward, or there's a compromise position that I'll talk about momentarily. But right now, if there is no franchise fee from Des Moines by, I think the end of this month is kind of the cutoff, because at that point it's too late, budgets are set. Then you're looking at a 40% reduction in services. Now, none of that is set in stone, but one of the routes that they're talking about just getting rid of entirely is Route 50, which is our Hickman Express. So that's problematic, of course, because we don't have a lot of routes to begin with. But there is a compromise position that the city of Des Moines is looking to basically, see if the rest of the commissioners are open to voting in. And so I would welcome any feedback from this group. But essentially the highlights of that is it would move the phase-in period from 8 years to 12 years on the current, fee assessment for each city participating member, which for Clive, that would amount to about an additional $100,000 over the course of, I believe it's 3 years before it starts going back down again. And that would incentivize the city of Des Moines to put forth a 1.5% franchise fee. A number of the commissioners, myself included, said that we would like to see 2.5% if we are moving to that longer phase in. There were comments from Des Moines about how that's just not tenable, but it's a negotiation in my mind. The other thing, there was discussion about this reimagined DART. That's part of this compromise proposal, is that DART, Des Moines wants to see Des Moines wants to see another study called the Reimagined DART study, and it's supposed to be everything and the kitchen sink is included in this study. The proposal, or the estimated fee, is for 400 to 600,000, which that seems very optimistic in my mind. And it's also the concern I expressed during that meeting, and I still have, is you're having this study done while the organization is over a barrel, right? And so there's going to be a time crunch on that study, and it's going to lead to preconceived notions making into that final result, right? So I have concern about the validity of that study right out of the gate. And then there was a commissioner that expressed that, this is not productive, in that this is an essential service. And if we keep having these discussions every 2 years in whatever form they come up in, it's just not tenable. So she would like to see a more long-term 2.5% franchise fee put in place. And even though that's not forever, it's still much better than the 1.5% compromise position. Under the compromise position, I should also note, there would still be service cuts, but it would mostly be reducing the frequency of buses rather than getting rid of routes. I think the only route that would be removed as the compromise position is the D-line route, which is a bit redundant. But all the others would move. It wouldn't be as many that move to a longer frequency, but there would still be a number of routes that would move from 20 minutes to, an hour, or maybe something in between. So think I covered Altoona and Ankeny's commissioners, they made it clear that they would not support the compromise position. Although Altoona didn't necessarily say it out loud, but they did say something along the lines of, if Des Moines did 2.5%, we could, I don't think they said we could talk, but they said something along the lines of that might make it more tenable. I don't know.
He would listen, he would start to
Yeah,
listen.
there you go. Yeah, yeah,
2.5.
right.
Today's
Yeah.
not listening.
So, but
What's the recourse for them not supporting it? Does that mean they're gonna back out of DART? Or are they just gonna vote against it, but then they have to go with it if everyone else votes for it?
and that's yet to be seen. I mean, yeah, that was discussed briefly during the meeting that, they might not be in the majority and lose, and then it would be up to them and their council to decide if they go the route of Grimes or
Because then
or
that
not.
could cost us more
Right.
if they pull out.
Yeah.
Major trickle down if those two left.
Right.
Right.
They have to give 18-month notice. And
Right.
we're paying, how much
So-
are our citizens paying right now?
It's just under $1 million right now. I believe. Or am I off on that?
Trying to think.
But
I
my
can
problem with
tell you.
that whole scenario, and I've argued before, and by the way, when I was commissioner, our amounts went down. I'm just saying, like, I'm just saying, right?
I'm just cleaning
Get
up the
under the
mess I
bus,
was
get
given,
under the
all right?
But
Literally.
but it seems like it's always all or nothing. So we're taking 50 Route 50 and we're just cutting. Why can't we as the commissioners in the council, Clive, to say, no, we're okay in our area to leave 50 and reduce our hours of service, right? So we'll still lower your dollars in our area, but let us pick what we think is best for for us to stay in, because they scare you by saying we're taking 50. Like Grimes, they said they're taking their route. Well, they have one route. So why wouldn't they drop out? You're about to take their one route, right? So if you take 50, that's about half of our route.
Yeah. No.
So we honestly have to think about at that point, do we even stay in for?
Well, and I'm not saying that DART is not worth pursuing and funding and maintaining.
Sure.
But yes, it is. I mean, it's got to make sense for the community of Clive, right? There is an aspect of we want to be a good neighbor, but not at an excised cost to the city, right? Yeah.
That extra 100,000 that you mentioned, is that amortized over like that last 4 years?
No,
Or
so
how does that work?
it's upfront. It's I don't remember the exact numbers, and all of this is projected, right?
Sure.
Because if the assessments come in different, then that's going to change this calculus. But under the 8-year funding model, we would have gone up for one more year, and then we would have started going down.
That was negotiated in the past.
So under this proposed, the 12-year expansion, it would go up for an additional, I believe it's an additional year, and then it would come back down to what it is the year prior, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And then it would start actually going down.
So we'd see the cost up front though.
Yeah, yep. So it'd be within the first 3 years of the.
Our levy generates about 1.1, the DART levy in Clive generates about 1.1 million. So to Councilmember McNally's point, they are projecting that in the next year, under this compromise, we would stay at 58 cents roughly. Because the valuations came in better, this was a bigger valuation year. Just to note that House File 718, which we'll talk about a lot next week, doesn't impact DART from a valuation perspective. And then it showed it popping up to 60 cents from 58 cents, which again, that is them projecting, I would argue, a relatively conservative valuation growth in those years. So we don't know for sure, but if you did see it, it would be roughly another $100,000. But then it would go down 59 cents, 55, 50, 46, 42, 37. And so the drawdown would just be longer than what was originally envisioned in the formula change that was made back when Des Moines took on, what we argued at the time, fair share burden of the system. Also Windsor Heights and Wells West Des Moines that are now getting to their caps. So those communities then have a choice or have a decision where they have to fund even Windsor Heights and West Des Moines dollars above their cap, because they'll be at the 95-cent cap that's set by the legislation. And that's the legislation that they've been trying to get changed for about a decade. So I would agree with Councilmember McEnany. Another study, I mean, DART's gone through, I want to say, since I've been here, probably 4 different studies that I know Michael and I have sat on a couple of them over the years.
The transit optimization study was just released, I think, October, September of last year, something like that.
And that was the last, yeah, that was the most recent study. So it's, to me, it's the choices are there. I just worry that the study is just trying to delay the inevitable on some of this to a certain degree, but I think it's ultimately got to come down to where does that compromised position end up with Des Moines?
There's probably something in the tomorrow plan.
A complete street.
Could you get a report on the number?
Oh, I
of
knew you were
Cloud
gonna-
riders
yeah,
affected
that's-
by, that would be impacted by?
Yeah,
told
yeah,
you what the plan was.
I can ask Luis for that.
Sounds like you're on the right track with where you're. wanting to go then, I think. So,
Yeah, I think so. I appreciate that. And your approach from what I've been hearing, and I think that's, not a lot on DART right now. The commissioners are really taking the pulse of the rest of their council, is from what I'm learning, and so I would shake my head saying you're on the right track.
Appreciate it.
Anything further?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Ted?
Okay, I'll be quick. Clive Community Foundation, I was officially onboarded today, and so I'm now on that board more officially. The last year, the target was $50,000 in grants that they were going to give out. This year. That target is 55,000, so it's a little bit higher. And based off what I was told today, beginning of the year, we're already, based off of what's been pledged, in very good shape to make that goal. So that's Clive Community Foundation. MPO, the executive director selection process is well underway, and within about 2 weeks, we should have that narrowed down to, a couple candidates that will then go through the interview process, and we should have someone selected probably within about 3 weeks. So it's gonna be quick.
Fast.
It's gonna be really quick. That's it.
Thank you.
Yeah, quickly, Pete, we'll hold off on that video till next week. It's getting late right now. A couple quick things here. Attended the Izumi Sushi ribbon cutting with Matt. Encourage everyone to try it out. They've really done a tremendous reinvestment in that facility and great food. Cabin fever reliever, attended that. Richard, want to give a shout out to your team. Really did a tremendous job. Looked like a nice crowd. First time I'd been to it and was very impressed, and look forward to attending next year with my family. And then finally, One Exec Board met, having another solid year. I think $5.4 million impact from the Cox or something, but very solid. So we're continuing to move forward with that.
Thank you. Susan?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Michael? Have nothing. Legal counsel?
No report, Your Honor. Just 2 items, just preview for next week's meeting. We will be coming back with the TAPS license revocation hearing. That's our 4 months. So there are materials that we have received from the license holder's attorney that are currently being reviewed, and they will be included in your packet for review for your meeting next week.
I will just add, I've been there a couple times since then. It's actually, it's a quiet crowd. It's quieter than I was expecting, honestly. But, a lot of what, I know Chief has told us there hasn't been calls, and, the crowd is, you can see that there's a group of regulars there, and, they all know each other, and they
Now
all,
you're part of it.
yeah. I don't know if I'm part of it yet, but yeah, no, I like the establishment, to the extent I was there.
Did they follow, we asked for documents in certain time frame, and for me, this was like their 5th chance. Did they follow what we asked them to do and get it in timely and when they were supposed to, or they just full of more excuses?
What I would say is we've received documents. The timely part is something that I would say we just got them today, and a little bit yesterday.
They're overdue.
We have reminded them that these are past due. We told them last Friday, I think it was last Friday or Thursday, that we wanted them by. So we were reviewing the materials. So the timeliness is a concern, and then you'll hear that concern from us next week. But we have received the documents both on the ownership change and the tax piece. Again, we'll share that with you all privately in the packet just because of the materials that are involved. But we have received the documents. Timely is the question. I would say it wasn't timely. So that is coming next week, as well as the general fund and trust and agency budget presentation. So we're doing things reverse because of the timing of things. So that will be next week's council meeting, workshop number 1, general fund budget trust and agency, followed by the second workshop on February 22nd for road use and the utilities. So we will have lots to share with you next week on that proposed budget.
Next time I'm gonna say, council, can you ask your client to answer yes or no? Are they timely or not? I think advise your client to answer.
Lastly, tomorrow in the weekly update that I'll send you, I'll be sending a draft of our coyote management plan that we've been working on with based on the city of Urbandale's plan. And we hear that a few other neighboring communities are also looking at that same plan. We've drafted, we'll call it the Clive version of it, which is very much in line with Urbandale's strategies. Share that draft with you to take a look at, and then either the second council meeting in February or first one in March, want to bring back to you for formal adoption as we head into the coyote season. Well, we're already in the coyote season. So more to come on that. That's all I have, Your Honor, unless there's any questions.
Questions for Matt? Matt and I also met with the Dallas County mayors and city managers today, talking about how we can more effectively communicate with the legislature. So we'll have more on that later. And to go out on what I hope is a high note, Clay, I wanted to say how nice it is to have the affirmation from the council this evening on the great work that you're doing. So congratulations. And with that, anything else for the good of the order tonight? If not, we'll adjourn at 9:21.